Cabin at Deadman's Lake. You ever notice how fishermen, they always think they're the lucky ones? They cast a line, reel in a trout, and swear it's fate. That's how it was with Jack, Earl, and Benny, three small-town guys, lifelong friends. They'd driven up to Deadman's Lake one October evening, looking for peace, beer, and a story they could brag about back at the bar. Jack was the loud one, always first to open a can, first to laugh too hard. Earl was the steady one, hands like stone, the kind of man who could fix an outboard motor with a rusted wrench and half a roll of duct tape. And Benny, well, Benny was the kid brother of the group, even though he was the same age. He was soft around the eyes, quick to spook, and never quite shook the feeling he didn't belong anywhere but in the shadow of the other two. The lake welcomed them in silence, a wide black mirror with fog curled at its edges. Pines pressed in tight around the shore, the kind that make you feel watched no matter which way you turn. The air smelled of wet earth, cold and sharp, carrying that early bite of winter. They set up camp just as the light drained out of the sky. Firewood cracked, flames licked the night, beer cans hissed open, and their laughter carried across the water. Ordinary men on an ordinary trip. But as the shadows deepened, the laughter felt thinner. The lake didn't lap the shore, it breathed. The trees didn't sway, they leaned in. And out there, across the black water, a crooked outline of something sat half hidden in the mist. A roof line, a chimney bent like a broken finger. The cabin. And every so often, Benny swore he saw a light flicker in its window. Jack was the practical one, Earl the loudmouth. Benny scared easy, which is why when they stumbled across that cabin tucked between the trees, Benny hesitated. The place was abandoned, sure, but inside, stocked shelves, fresh bread, meat, cans of beans, like someone had been expecting. Hell, Earl laughed, cracking a beer. I say we take the gift. And so they did. They built a fire, played cards, drank until their laughter drowned out the silence of the lake. But sometime past midnight, Benny froze, his head cocked toward the door. "You hear that?" he whispered. Footsteps, slow, heavy, circling the cabin. At first they joked, probably a raccoon, maybe a deer, but no deer walks like that. Around and around it went, closer, louder, boots scraping against wet earth. Jack grabbed the poker from the fire. Earl, drunk but still grinning, swaggered to the window and yanked the curtain aside. Nothing but fog pressed against the glass. Thick, hungry, and then knock. One sharp rap at the door. Benny nearly dropped his beer. Jack raised the poker higher. Earl, still playing tough, shouted, "Who's there?" Silence. Another knock, louder. Jack's voice was tight now. "We ain't open for company." But when Earl twisted the handle just to prove there was nothing, the door swung open on its own. No wind, no draft, just open. Fog slid inside like it had been waiting. They slammed the door shut, bolted it, backed away. The cabin felt smaller now, the shadows thicker. Benny swore he saw something move in the corner of his eye, something pale pressed against the window for just a second before vanishing into the night. The footsteps started again, this time quicker, angrier, circling, scraping. And then came the whisper, faint, ragged, seeping through the cracks in the wood. None of them could make out the words, but they knew, whatever was outside, it was calling them by name. The door shuddered. Jack grabbed the poker from the fireplace. Earl cursed under his breath. Benny just whispered prayers. And then, the door exploded inward. What stood there wasn't a man. Not anymore. Its flesh peeled away like wet bark, hanging in strips that swung when it moved. Its skin gleamed black with rot, veins bloated and pulsing as if something crawled beneath. The eyes, clouded, blind, but still burning with a terrible recognition. And in its hands, dripping from its wrists like chains, were fishing nets. Tangled, stinking, weighted with rusted hooks. It staggered forward, dragging the stink of the lake with it. Jack swung the poker. The thing caught it midair, metal screeching against bone. Earl grabbed a chair and smashed it across the creature's back. The chair disintegrated. The thing didn't even flinch. Benny bolted for the door, but the net snapped out like a whip, wrapping his ankles, pulling him down hard. Hooks tore into his skin, ripping fabric, ripping flesh. His screams echoed high and thin as the creature reeled him in like a catch. Jack charged, slamming the poker through its chest. For a heartbeat, it worked. The thing staggered, sagged against the blow. Then it lifted its face, lips peeling into a grin that wasn't human. The sound that came out of its throat wasn't a groan or a scream. It was the lake itself, bubbling, churning, drowning. "Cut him loose," Jack shouted. But Earl froze, eyes wide, trembling as if he'd already seen how this story ended. The nets pulled Benny closer, closer, until his face pressed against the creature's chest into that black rock, and the lake's voice swallowed his own. Jack ripped a hunting knife from his belt. He slashed, once, twice. The ropes of the net split apart, spraying him with slime and brine that burned like acid. Benny tumbled free, coughing, bleeding, but alive. The creature howled, a sound that shook the glass in the window. It lashed out, knocking Jack across the cabin, splintering the wall. Earl finally snapped from his stupor, grabbing Benny and dragging him upright. And in that moment, Jack had to choose. Run with his friends into the fog, or stay and finish what had come to them. By dawn, the cabin was silent. The fire burned low. No sign of the men, no sign of the thing, just the smell of brine, just the damp chill of the lake pressing at the windows. But silence is never empty, not at Deadman's Lake. It holds its breath, waiting. Jack stirred first, groaning where he'd been thrown against the wall. His ribs felt splintered, lungs raw, but he was alive. He dragged himself upright, searching the room. Earl sat in a corner, his hands clamped over his ears as if to keep some sound from leaking in. His face was gray, hollow, eyes fixed on nothing. And Benny, poor Benny, lay stretched on the floorboards, pale as the fog outside. He breathed in shallow rasps, nets still coiled around his legs like snakes that refused to let go. His skin bubbled where the slime had touched it, blistered as it burned. Jack crawled to him, knife still slick in his hand. He cut the rest of the nets away, but the hooks had left their mark. Deep, jagged, the kind of wounds that don't heal clean. Earl finally looked up, voice shaking. "It wanted him. You saw it. It wasn't after us. Just him." Jack didn't answer. He pressed his palm against Benny's wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, but the boy flinched, crying out. Beneath the pain, there was something else in his eyes, something Jack couldn't quite name. A shimmer, a reflection, like lake water caught in a lantern's glow. Outside, the fog hadn't lifted. It clung to the trees, heavy, unmoving. The world beyond the windows was gone, swallowed whole. Only the sound of water dripping, steady and patient, tapping against the cabin walls. Earl rose, shaking, pacing. "We leave, now, before it comes back." He pointed to the door, though his voice cracked around the words. Jack wanted to believe him, wanted to run, but his gaze kept sliding to Benny, to the way the boy's chest hitched, the way his lips moved soundlessly, whispering words he didn't know. And then there it was again, that bubbling hiss, the lake's voice but softer now, coming from Benny's throat. Jack's heart clenched. The fight wasn't over. The thing hadn't left. It had only found another way inside. When searchers came a week later, they found the cabin neat as a pin. Shelves stocked, beds made. No overturned chairs, no broken windows, no sign of struggle. The only trace that anyone had been there at all was by the door. 3 fishing poles, brand new, waiting. The men from town whispered about it over whiskey and coffee, trading the story like cards no one wanted to hold for too long. Some swore the 3 friends had packed up and vanished, skipped town like cowards. Others said the lake took them, like it had taken so many before. But a few, those who'd grown up listening to the whispers, just shook their heads. They knew the truth. The cabin was never empty. It never stayed empty. Jack, Earl, and Benny were gone, yes, but not gone in the way a body is buried. Gone in the way a voice carries, a laugh echoes, a whisper never really leaves the room. And sometimes, when the fog curls low over Deadman's Lake, folks say you can hear them inside the cabin. Cards shuffling, beer cans cracking open, a young man whispering prayers. Then if you stay too long, if you lean close enough to listen, you'll hear the nets dragging across the floor. Heavy, patient, waiting for the next catch. So let me ask you, next time you find yourself near Deadman's Lake, you see that little cabin in the trees, smoke trailing from the crooked chimney, would you go inside? Because somebody's still stocking it, and they're always hungry for new guests. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and gets these tales out to more people who love a good scare. Don't forget to subscribe for daily content and share this video with a friend who's brave enough to spend a night at Deadman's Lake. Thanks so much for listening and watching. There's another story recommended on your screen right now. I think you'll love it. I'll see you back here tomorrow if you make it through the night. The Screaming Pines. You ever notice how the woods sound different at night? Not quiet, never quiet. They breathe, they creak, they whisper. And if you're not careful, they answer. Our story begins with Jamie. Not a hero, not some adrenaline junkie looking for trouble. Paula, just Jamie, an ordinary college kid. The kind who double checks locks before bed. The kind who Googles what to do if chased by a bear before going on a hike. The world is dangerous enough without tempting you, right? But Jamie's friends, Rachel, Marco, and Tyler, don't see it that way. To them, danger's part of the fun. And so they drag Jamie along for one last trip before the summer ends. One last hurrah before adult life sinks its claws in. The plan? A weekend of camping in the stretch of forest just outside their small town. A forest with a name whispered more like a dare than a destination, the Screaming Pines. At first it feels almost normal. A tank full of gas, windows down, music too loud, backpacks bouncing in the trunk. But names like that don't stick without reason. Ask around at the diner and you'll hear stories. How the trees moan in the night, how the wind in the needles doesn't sound like wind at all. More like voices. Jamie doesn't believe it, doesn't want to. Ghost stories are for drunks and kids, not him. He's worried about real things, mosquitoes, cold ground, maybe poison ivy. But when they finally reach the tree line, something shifts. The air feels heavier, the light dimmer, even though the sun still hangs bright above them. And in that silence before anyone says a word, Jamie hears it. A low, stretched sound rolling through the trees. Not quite wind, not quite voice, something in between. Jamie forces a laugh, tells himself it's nothing, just nerves, just the woods being the woods. But deep down a thought lingers, sharp and unwelcome. The pines are listening. At first, it's perfect, a cheap tent, a little fire, a six-pack making the rounds, the kind of night that feels endless. They laugh, they sing, the flames lick upward and their shadows sway tall against the trunks. And the trees, they laugh back. Not an echo exact, not natural. Like the sound went out into the dark, and something else threw it back. Jamie notices it first. When he laughs short and nervous, the echo comes back lower, hungrier. And when Rachel calls out echo, the forest doesn't just repeat her word, it adds another, stay. They freeze, then someone cracks a joke. Nervous chuckles all around. Acoustics, they tell themselves. Tricks of the wind, the rational lies people use to plaster over fear. But the forest feels different now. The trees lean closer. The fire spits and sputters like it's choking on its own smoke. The woods aren't just listening, they're answering. Marco tries to lighten the mood, tossing another log on the flames. Tyler mutters about drunk campers messing with them, hiding in the trees. They argue, voices sharp, too loud against the night. Jamie doesn't argue. He just keeps glancing over his shoulder because he swears the shadows move when he isn't looking. And then Alex, loud, fearless Alex, grins that reckless grin. He stands, cups his hands around his mouth, and lets out a scream. A big, stupid, defiant sound, just to prove nothing's wrong. But the scream doesn't fade. It grows louder, louder. A second voice tangles, a third, dozens, rising in pitch until it feels like glass cracking in the air. The campfire hisses down to embers, the dark rushing and thick and sudden. Then, silence, sharp, absolute, and Alex's chair empty. His half-drunk beard still sweating in the dirt. No footsteps, no rustle of brush, just gone, like the night swallowed him whole. For a long time, nobody moves. Jamie's heart thrashes in his chest, trying to tear its way out. Rachel whispers Alex's name like saying it will conjure him back. Marco's face has gone pale. Tyler fumbles for a flashlight with shaking hands. But the woods stay quiet, waiting, watching. And the pines, they start to whisper again as panic erupts. Flashlights slice the dark, beams whipping wild across trunks that all look the same. No sign of Alex, no broken branches, no footprints in the dirt. Just that voice, or voices, their voices, echoing back from the trees. Calling out, calling forward, rising and falling like a choir that doesn't breathe. Sometimes in harmony, sometimes a ragged chorus of screams. Jamie knows what the others won't admit. The woods aren't just alive, they're hungry, and they've chosen. Rachel stumbles, sobbing Alex's name. Marco shouts into the night until his voice breaks. Tyler's flashlight flickers, then dies, plunging half the clearing into ink. And through all of it, Jamie just stands there, pulse pounded, chest tight. When Rachel grabs his hand, her nails digging crescent moons into his skin, she whispers what they're all thinking. Run, but run where? Every direction looks the same. Needles and shadows, shadows and needles, stretching into forever. No paths, no markers, just teeth, waiting to close. Jamie shakes his head, throat dry, but before he can speak, he hears it, his own voice, from somewhere behind him, screaming his name. It's impossible, wrong in a way that digs under the skin, because it doesn't just sound like him, it is him. Same breathless panic, same cracked tone, like someone scooped his fear out of his chest and threw it into the woods. The others hear it too. Marco goes rigid, Rachel gasps. Tyler mutters, "That's not real, that's not real," like a prayer. But Jamie feels it pulling him, an invisible hook lodged deep in his ribs. Do you follow yourself? Do you trust yourself? His feet move before his brain catches up. One step, two. The trees close in, swallowing the light. Rachel screams his name, her real voice this time, raw and terrified. He doesn't turn back, because the voice ahead, the one that is him, sounds desperate. It sounds like dying. And if he doesn't follow, if he doesn't try, he'll never forgive himself. So Jamie runs, straight into the dark, and the pines open wide. Branches whip Jamie's face. Roots claw at his ankles. He doesn't stop, can't stop. Behind him, his friends' screams blur together. First sharp, then muffled, then gone. One by one, swallowed until only his own echoes remain. And then silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that hums in your bones like the world is holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Jamie staggers into a clearing. The moon drapes it in pale silver, but the ground, oh God, the ground is wrong. Too soft, too uneven, like it's been turned over again and again. He shines his light downward, the beam trembling in his hand. Shoes, backpacks, scraps of tents half buried in dirt. The woods keep trophies. Jamie's breath rattles. He drops to his knees, dust clawing at the soil. Fingernails catch on nylon fabric, on leather straps, on bone, polished smooth. A sob rises sharp in his throat, but it catches before it can escape, because then he hears it again, his own voice. Not from across the clearing, not from the trees, from right beside his ear, hot and close though no one is there. Stay. Jamie jerks, flashlight whipping through empty air. Nothing. No one. Just the echo of that word burrowing deep, wrapping around his mind like vines. The beam falls on something at the far edge of the clearing. Alex's jacket, torn, stained. A few yards beyond it, a fresh trail of broken branches leading deeper still. Jamie lurches toward it, heart slamming, but his legs shake. Each step feels like wading through syrup, the forest pressing down on him, whispering, "Stay, stay, stay." Behind him, another voice rises, Rachel's, thin, desperate, calling his name. For a split second, hope flares. She's alive, she's here. But when he turns, the clearing is empty. Just trees, just shadows, and the echo of his name curling back to him, warped and wrong. Jamie drops the flashlight. The beam rolls wild across the dirt, illuminating those scraps and bones like an exhibit in some terrible museum. His stomach knots, his throat closes, because he understands now, this isn't just hunger. The woods don't kill, they keep. By dawn, the woods look almost normal again. Morning light drips through the branches, painting gold across the undergrowth. Birds chatter, the river murmurs, the world pretending nothing happened. But when a pair of hikers stumble on the campsite, the truth shows itself. The tents are shredded, canvas hanging like skin off bone. The fire is nothing but ash and cold stone. Backpacks gutted, beer cans crushed flat. No sign of Jamie, no sign of Rachel, Marco, Tyler, not even Alex. Just absence. The sheriff comes and the deputies. They take photographs, bag evidence, ask questions they already know the answers to. Another group gone, same as before, same as always. The locals shake their heads, whisper in the diner booths. Another group swallowed by the screaming pines. Happens every couple of years. Always has. Always will. And if you don't believe it, if you think it's just talk, stand at the tree line yourself. Wait until the wind shifts. Listen. What you hear won't be birds, won't be branches. It'll be laughter, bubbling sharp as broken glass. It'll be screams that don't fade, but circle back, crawling into your ears, into your chest. And if you're unlucky, if the forest decides to notice you, you'll hear something worse. Your own name. Carried back to you. The screaming pines don't echo. They remember, and they're always hungry. If you made it this far into the story, thank you for listening and for surviving with me through the dark. If you enjoyed this tale, please give the video a like. It helps the channel grow and brings more people into the circle. Don't forget to subscribe for daily content. Every day, a new shadow, a new whisper waiting for you. And hey, share this with someone who loves a good scare. Maybe they'll hear the pines calling too. Thanks again for being here. Another story is waiting for you, recommended on your screen right now. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Sleep well, if you can. You ever notice how snow makes everything quieter? Like the world's holding its breath, waiting for something it can't quite name. That's what Alex thought when he stepped out of his shift at the diner, late December. Almost midnight. His breath curled up in the freezing air like smoke from a dying candle. 24 years old, the kind of age where you're young enough to still believe life's going to happen, but old enough to know it probably won't. He wasn't much. Not the kind of guy anyone would write a story about. Just a kid bussing tables at Harlow's Diner on Main Street, Ridgefield. A town so small you could hear the church bells from anywhere if the wind carried right. He worked doubles to pay off a car he hated driving, a rusted-out Buick that smelled faintly of gasoline and regret. His routine was simple. Wake, work, eat when he remembered, collapse into bed, and start again. Ordinary guy, ordinary night. Except there was something strange about the snow that evening. The storm had rolled in during his shift, painting the town in white. Ridgefield was a postcard now. Glowing street lamps, snow draped over roofs like frosting down streets wiped clean of cars and footprints. A silence so heavy it pressed against his chest. But it wasn't just silence. The snow was whispering. At first, Alex thought it was wind sliding through the alleyways, or maybe the hiss of pipes under the sidewalk. But no, these weren't sounds. They were syllables, broken words scattered and soft, weaving through the air like threads of smoke. He stopped walking, his boots crunching to a halt on the sidewalk, tilted his head. Listened. It was there, barely. A hush of voices too faint to belong to anything human. He blinked, shook his head, kept moving. Sleep deprivation, that's all it was. He'd been pulling 16-hour shifts. Too much coffee, not enough food. His body was running on fumes. But the whispers didn't fade. They followed, tucked in the folds of the snow, brushing against his ears whenever the wind shifted. It was like the snow wanted to tell him something. And if he listened long enough, maybe he'd understand. He told himself it was stress. Too much coffee, not enough sleep. He'd been closing at the diner for 3 weeks straight, and his dreams, when he had them, were full of nonsense. Dishes clattering, neon signs flickering, nothing that stuck in the morning. But the second night, the whispers changed. They said his name. He was walking down Maple Street, a grease-stained paper bag of leftover burgers clutched in one hand when it came, clear as ice breaking on a lake. Alex, he stopped dead. His breath fogged in the air, thick and fast. The skin under his jacket prickled, every hair standing on end. He whipped around, scanning the whitewashed street, but there was no one. Just snow falling in slow, lazy spirals. No footprints behind him, no doors opening. Alex, this time, closer. His throat went dry. He stood there a full minute, listening till the cold bit into his bones and forced him to move again. He didn't tell anyone. Who would believe him? Ridgefield wasn't the kind of place for ghost stories. It was a town of potlucks and Friday night football games, where the strangest thing you might see was the mayor drunk at the grocery store. Still, each night, the whispers grew louder, stronger, like they were gaining courage. And then came something new. Shadows. Not the normal kind that stretched from lampposts and parked cars. These were too fast, too tall, flickering across rooftops in the corner of his vision. He'd look up, nothing. Just shingles draped in snow. Streetlights above him buzzed and blinked like dying stars, their glow washing in and out until he wondered if the dark itself was watching. He tried to fight it. Music, earbuds jammed in until they hurt. Metal, country, even white noise. Didn't matter. The whispers slid underneath the sound, sneaking past the guitars, curling under the drums. Soft, insistent. Always calling, always for it. He stopped walking home the same way twice. Took alleys, cut across yards, even borrowed his roommate's car once or twice. But it didn't matter. Wherever there was snow, and in Ridgefield, there was nothing but the voices found him. The worst part? He was starting to understand them. Not fully. Not like sentences in English. More like fragments. Please, a language his brain shouldn't know, but did. And the more he listened, the clearer it became. One night, he heard laughter threaded in with the whispers. Childlike, too sharp. He nearly dropped his keys trying to unlock the door. Another night, he swore he saw a hand pressed against side of the diner window after closing. Thin, pale, vanished when he blinked. Sleep became impossible. He lay awake in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the snow to speak. Because it always did. And deep down, Alex knew it wasn't just talking. It was calling him something. On the fifth night, Alex snapped. He couldn't keep pretending it. The whispers weren't background noise. They weren't fatigue or stress or tricks of the wind. They were real, and they wanted it. So when he heard it again, his name, hissed low and urgent, curling through the midnight air like smoke, he didn't turn away this time. He followed, through alleys slick with ice, past houses with curtains drawn tight, every window glowing faintly like an eye half shut in sleep. The streets were dead quiet. Not even the plows had come through. Just Alex, his breath a frantic rhythm, and that voice tugging him forward. It led him past the last row of houses, out where Ridgefield ended and the woods began. The snow was deeper here, swallowing his boots, but he pressed on. The branches above were heavy with ice, their weight groaning like tired bones. His hands were numb, his teeth chattering, but the whispers grew louder, threading into his skull until it felt like they weren't around him anymore. They were inside him. Every step was guided, every breath counted, until finally the trees thinned and he stumbled into a clearing. And there, God, there was a shape, tall, thin, wrong. Its body wasn't solid, it was drifting flakes, a storm standing upright, every gust of wind holding it together. And where its face should have been was only a hollow mask of snow, two pits gouged deep like empty eyes. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were a chorus, screaming silently from within his chest, his veins, his marrow. He didn't hear them with his ears, he felt them. Stay, lie down, never leave. The thing stretched one arm, long, spindly, collapsing and reforming as the flakes shifted. Alex staggered backward, but his legs were gone, numb, useless. Frost was climbing him, wrapping around his ankles, his calves, inching higher like vines of ice rooting him to the spot. His breath came in knives, his vision blurred at the edges, and a terrible, hollow thought sank into his mind. This is how it takes them, how it always has. He could feel it pulling at him, pulling him down into the snow, into silence, into forever. And then something inside him snapped. He opened his mouth, and before he knew what he was doing, he screamed. Not words, not a plea. His own name. Alex! The sound ripped through the clearing, raw and jagged, louder than the wind, louder than the storm, louder than the 1,000 voices clawing at his skull. And for a heartbeat, just a second, it broke. The shape staggered, its hollow face shivering apart, a storm that bounded unraveling. The whispers shrieked and split, scattering like glass in a fire. Air came rushing back into Alex's lungs. His legs loosened, though the frost still burned like brands. He stumbled forward, gasping, knowing he had torn something open, something that could never be sealed again. He stumbled back into town like a drunk, delirious and half frozen, his boots dragging trenches in the fresh snow. His body was heavy, every step stolen from him by something he couldn't name. By the time he reached Main Street, the storm had quieted, the lamps flickering pale halos over Ridgefield's sleeping heart. Alex collapsed against the locked doors of the diner, the same door he'd walked out of every night that week, his forehead pressed to the glass, his breath fogging faint circles that faded as quickly as they came. His body shivered uncontrollably, teeth rattling in his skull, but he couldn't muster the strength to bang on the door, couldn't call for help. He slid down the frame and let the dark take him. When morning came, the cook found him. Mr. Raleigh, 60 years old, faced like a slab of meat from too many years over the grill. He opened up at dawn, and instead of empty sidewalks, he found Alex, frozen, pale, lips tinged blue, alive, barely. The ambulance came fast, lights bouncing off the sleepy storefronts, sirens cutting through the quiet like jagged glass. Ridgefield hadn't seen that kind of noise in months. Neighbors peeked from curtains, gossip brewing before Alex had even reached the ER. The doctors called it frostbite, mild hypothermia. Nothing unusual for a young man walking home too late in a storm. They shook their heads at the frost patterns creeping up his calves, muttered about circulation, stress, dehydration. And when Alex tried to tell them about the voice, the thing in the clearing, the snow whispering his name, they exchanged looks over his bed. prescribed rest, suggested he see someone. Hallucinations, they said, stress. But Alex knew better, because when they thawed him out under hospital blankets, when the warmth finally bled back into his skin, little flakes of snow melted from his arms, his chest, his neck. Perfect, crystalline, sliding down his skin in rivulets of water. Though he hadn't touched the storm in hours, he stared at them, hardened, hammering. Nobody else noticed. By noon, the story was already circulating. Alex, the kid from Harlow's, nearly froze himself to death. Too many late shifts, too much walking home. Some folks shook their heads. Others laughed, said he needed thicker socks, a better coat. By evening, the whole town knew, but no one believed. Not about the whispers, not about the shadows, not about the thing that tried to claim him in the woods. And Alex, he sat in the stiff hospital bed, watching flakes of snow form and dissolve on his skin like his body was carrying the storm inside him now. He didn't argue, didn't try to convince anyone. What was the point? They hadn't heard it. They hadn't stood in that clearing. But he knew one thing. The snow wasn't finished with him. Not yet. Now, he doesn't go out at night. Not anymore. Alex keeps his life small, boxed in by daylight. He walks to work in the mornings, when the streets are loud with kids heading to school and the sound of snowplows rattling down Main Street. He heads home before dark, always before the lamps flicker on, never daring to linger once the sun sinks behind the ridge, because that's when it's strongest. Quiet, the weight, the pull. He doesn't risk it, doesn't tempt fate, but even locked away, even safe behind walls and glass, he can't shake it completely. Sometimes when winter rolls back around and the first flakes drift from the sky, he hears it again. The whispers, soft, patient, waiting. They curl around the edges of his apartment window, brushing faintly against the glass, almost tender, like fingers tapping, testing, calling his name. Alex. Not urgent, not angry, just inevitable. And he knows deep in his bones, that one day, when he's tired enough, lonely enough, broken enough, he might answer. He might open the door, step outside, follow the sound back into the woods, into the clearing, into whatever waits for him there. And when that day comes, no doctor, no friend, no locked door will save him, because the snow doesn't forget, and it never lets go. If you've been listening this far, thank you for joining me tonight for Whispers in the Snow. If that story pulled you in, if it left you looking a little longer at the frost on your window, don't forget to like this video. It helps the channel grow, and it tells the algorithm to share this story with more people who love chilling tales just like you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I upload new stories every single day, crafted to keep you hooked until the very last word. And if you know someone who could use a good scare tonight, share this with them. Let the whisper spread. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. There's another story recommended for you right there on your screen, waiting to pull you in. I'll see you back here tomorrow night. Sleep well, if you can. The Lost Trail of Black Hollow. You ever notice how trails in the woods always promise something? Peace, adventure, maybe even escape. Well, in the town of Black Hollow, tiny place, maybe 600 souls, there's a trail that no one remembers being there the week before. One day it's just there, a wooden post hammered into the dirt, fresh paint on the sign, Black Hollow Loop. Now, our hiker, let's call him Daniel, he's not a thrill seeker, not a daredevil. He's an ordinary guy, middle-aged, out of shape, works a job that's slowly sanding him down to nothing. His doctor told him to walk more, so here he is, boots muddy, water bottle sloshing, telling himself a little fresh air will do the trick. He should have turned around the second he noticed the sign was too new, like the forest wanted him to see it. But he didn't. That's the mistake. At first, he thinks it's a person, a figure, just beyond the tree line. Tall, still, watching. But when he blinks, it's gone. Daniel's throat goes dry. He isn't a man given to imagination. He works numbers, contracts deadlines. But something about this place is rewriting him, bending the edges of what he knows is real. The air feels wrong now, heavy. Each breath tastes of copper, like blood left out too long. He takes a swig from his water bottle, and it comes up warm, metallic. He spits it out and keeps moving. He chooses the last path, swearing under his breath, boots crunching harder, faster. Branches claw his jacket like greedy hands. His ankle twists on a rock, sharp jolt of pain, but he forces himself on, because staying still feels worse than moving. Staying still feels like surrender. Minutes pass, maybe hours. Time's dissolving. When he stumbles back into the clearing yet again, his legs nearly buckle. The fire pit isn't cold anymore. It smokes, thin gray fingers curling upward into the bright, indifferent sky. Daniel edges closer. The stones are warm, too warm, and in the ash, he swears he sees something glint, metal. He digs with trembling fingers until they close around it. A key, old, rusted, teeth crooked like they've been gnawed. The sound of breathing comes back then, not his, not in sync with his own. It hovers right behind his ear, wet, steady, patient. He spins, nothing, just trees. Trees and shadows that lean closer than they should. Daniel pockets the key and bolts down a path, any path, praying for escape. His lungs burn, his ankle throbs, but something primal pushes him on, something whispering in the marrow of his bones. Don't stop. Don't let it catch you. And as he runs, as the forest closes in around him, he realizes something chilling. The trail sign back at the start, the one that read Black Hollow Loop, he never passed it again. No matter how far he's walked, he hasn't found his way back to town. This isn't a loop at all. It's a trap. He's staggering, chest heaving, hands slick with blood that may or may not be his. The world tilts, the trees wheeling overhead like vultures waiting for their cue. The other Daniel, the thing isn't gone. Not really. It's sprawled in the dirt, twitching, ribs cracking with each wheeze. But its grin hasn't faded. If anything, it's wider now, stretched from ear to ear, as if death itself is just another joke it knows the punchline to. Daniel clutches the rusted key, the teeth biting into his palm. He doesn't remember pulling it from his pocket, but it's there, warm, almost pulsing. The thing's eyes flicker to it, and then it speaks. Not with words, no, the sound is too broken, too guttural. But in his head, clear as day, unlock it. The voice isn't his own. It's older, hungrier. It carries the weight of roots and stone and everything buried under Black Hollow for centuries. Daniel backs away, but the clearing shifts. The paths are gone. Every tree, every shadow, every breath of air funnels inward, dragging him closer to the fire pit. Smoke rises in thick black ropes now, and he realizes the pit isn't stone at all. Not really. It's a mouth. A ring of jagged rock teeth wide enough to swallow him whole. The key burns in his hand. He wants to throw it, bury it, leave it, but some part of him knows it won't matter. The forest has chosen him. It's been waiting. His double drags itself upright, bones cracking like kindling, face sagging into something less human with each breath. You open it, it rasps, blood bubbling on its lips, or I do. Daniel's heart slams against his ribs. There's no choice that isn't damnation. Unlock the pit and unleash whatever's inside, or lose, and let his grinning shadow do it for him. The forest leans closer, listening, waiting. So Daniel screams, lifts the key high and drives it down into the ash-filled mountain. The fire pit shudders, the ground splits, and the woods of Black Hollow roar awake. But when Daniel closes his eyes at night, he hears it. The crackle of stone shifting, the low groan of something vast and buried rolling in its sleep. And worst of all, the laugh. That jagged, broken laugh, stitched into the dark behind his eyelids. He starts locking every door in his house, double-checking the windows, not because he's afraid of someone getting in, but because he's afraid of what might get out. His coworkers notice the small things first. The way he stares too long at reflections, how he flinches at his own shadow when it stretches across the office floor. One day, a colleague jokes that he looks like death warmed over. Daniel's smile freezes, and for a heartbeat, they swear they see teeth too sharp, too wrong, gleaming in the fluorescent light. They don't joke with him again. The trail sign disappears as suddenly as it appeared. Town records show nothing about a Black Hollow Loop. Ask the old-timers at the diner, and they shake their heads. Never heard of it. Never will. But Daniel knows better. He can feel it deep down. The trail didn't vanish. It's waiting. Sleeping, maybe. And the key, the one he thought he left buried in the ash, he still feels its weight in his pocket sometimes. Cold, heavy, pressing against his leg like a reminder. There's one other thing. Children in Black Hollow start whispering about a man in the woods, a figure they see just past the tree line at dusk, tall, still, watching. Parents scold them for making up stories, but the kids swear he smiles at them, always smiling. Daniel keeps to himself. He works, he sleeps, he eats, the motions of a life that no longer fits him. But every so often, when he passes a mirror, he pauses, studies his own face, his own tired eyes, And for a moment, just a flicker, he swears the reflection grins before he does. The couple hesitates at first. They laugh, nudge each other, say it's probably just the Park Service putting in something new. But the man runs his fingers along the post, smooth, unweathered. The wood is too clean, the letters too sharp. Still, curiosity wins. It always does. They start down the path, chattering, not noticing how the birds fall silent, not noticing how the air thickens like the forest is holding its breath. Back in town, Daniel sits alone at his kitchen table. Coffee gone cold, eyes unfocused. He hasn't been near the woods since that day, but he doesn't need to. They followed him home, the whispers in the walls, the faint scratching beneath the floorboards, the moments when the house feels like it's leaning in to listen. He thinks about the couple sometimes, though he doesn't know them, not really. He wonders if they found the clearing yet, wonders if they've heard the breathing behind them, wonders if they've seen themselves grinning through the smoke. He doesn't pray for them, he doesn't warn them. Deep down, he knows there's no point. The forest always gets what it wants. And Daniel, well, Daniel isn't sure anymore if he made it out of Black Hollow at all. Maybe he left something behind. Maybe something else came back wearing his skin. That night, brushing his teeth, he looks in the bathroom mirror. His reflection looks back, foam dripping from its mouth. For a moment, neither of them move. And then, slowly, his reflection winks. The toothbrush slips from his hand. So let me ask you again, if you found a brand new trail where there shouldn't be one, would you take it? Or would you be smart enough to turn back before it's too late? If this story pulled you in, do me a favor, hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and make sure more people can find these stories. Don't forget to subscribe for daily content and share this video with someone who loves a good scare, or maybe someone who needs a warning. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching. There's another story recommended for you on the screen right now, so go check it out. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Sleep well, if you can. The Fire Watcher. They say every college kid has that one summer job they'll never forget. For James, it wasn't flipping burgers at the diner, or lifeguarding at the town pool, or pushing carts in the supermarket lot. No, James signed up for silence, a fire watcher's post, 30 miles out in the national forest, where the road turns to gravel and the gravel eventually just stops. The tower itself was little more than a box on stilts, wooden stairs that creaked like old bones, a glass cabin perched at the top, and a view that stretched into forever. Trees rolling in green waves, a lake glinting like polished steel, ridges sharp against the sky. From up there, James felt like he was sitting on God's shoulder, and he loved it. He loved the crackle of the radio, the hiss of his own coffee on the propane stove, the absolute stillness that came after sundown. Sometimes he'd swear he could hear the forest breathing, the whole place alive under him, whispering to itself. But here's the thing about silence. It makes you notice every little thing, the shift of shadows, the odd bend in a tree branch, the way the light changes. On his third night, just as the horizon bled red and the ridges turned black, he noticed it. A thin, dark thread of smoke rising from the same patch of trees, straight, steady, undeniable. His heart kicked up, because that's the job. Spot it, report it, stop the whole forest from burning down. But before he could even reach for the radio, the smoke vanished. Not dispersed, vanished. Like someone had pinched it out with their fingers. James stared, waiting for it to return. It didn't. The sky darkened, the stars came alive, and the forest below sank into blackness. That night he lay awake in the narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling, wondering if his eyes had lied to him. But when dawn came and the sun rose over the ridges, James knew one thing for certain. Smoke doesn't just vanish, not like that. And if it did, something else was down there, watching. James started marking the time in his logbook. 8:47 p.m., smoke. 8:48 p.m., gone. The consistency unnerved him. Fires don't play by clocks. He tried convincing himself it was heat haze, some quirk of temperature and light. But the smell lingered, acrid and real, the kind of smoke that bites the back of your throat. The radio offered no comfort. Relax, the ranger's voice said, lazy and distant. Long shifts make men see ghosts. James laughed along, but his hand shook as he set the receiver back down. By the sixth night, the smoke didn't just rise, it writhed, like it was alive, twisting shapes into the air. Faces, almost, sharp jaws, hollow eyes. He blinked, and they dissolved. But the image burned in his mind long after the smoke was gone. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the tower set him upright. Every rustle in the underbrush made him grip the axe he kept by his bunk. He started talking to himself, whispering questions into the dark. Who's down there? What do you want? On the 10th night, James hiked down again. This time he swore he saw movement, someone slipping between the trees, just beyond the beam of his flashlight. A figure, tall and slow, carrying something heavy. His pulse slammed. He shouted, his voice cracking against the silence. No answer. He ran toward where he thought the figure had gone, but the forest swallowed him whole. Branches clawed at his arms, roots tangled his boots, and just when he thought he had them cornered, the smell vanished. The clearing was bare, but not empty. At his feet lay footprints. Dozens of them pressed deep into the dirt, circling the clearing, burned into the ground as if made by boots of coal. The air shimmered with leftover heat. James backed away, trembling, clutching his axe until his knuckles blanched. He returned to the tower, but the forest no longer felt like trees and shadows. It felt like something alive, something waiting. And for the first time since he'd climbed those stairs, James realized he wasn't watching the forest anymore. The forest was watching him. The crash was deafening. Wood splintered, iron bolts screamed, glass shattered into a rain of glittering shards. The Firewatch Tower, his sanctuary, his one escape, folded in on itself like paper and disappeared into the inferno. James stumbled backward, coughing hard as smoke clawed its way into his lungs. His eyes watered, blurring the figures closing in around him. They weren't moving like men. They swayed, staggered, limbs hanging wrong. Burnt husks, their skin cracked and glowing faint red as if embers still lived beneath. They circled him, slowly, patiently. Their silence was worse than any scream. "Stay back," James roared, swinging the axe wildly. The blade passed straight through one, scattering sparks that fizzled before hitting the ground. He stumbled again, nearly dropping it. That's when he saw the figure in the clearing, the same burning man he glimpsed inside the smoke. But now up close, it wasn't just a shape. It had a face, or the echo of one. Charred lips twisted into something like a grin. Its eyes glowed white-hot, furnace bright. James froze, heat rolling off the thing like waves. It raised one hand, palm open, and all at once the other figure stopped moving. The forest went still, silent, waiting. And then he heard it, not with his ears, but inside his head. A voice like fire cracking wood. You watched, now burn. The ground split beneath him, like flames tearing through the roots like veins. Heat blistered his skin, his lungs screaming for air. He ran, stumbling between the husks, dodging their outstretched arms. His shirt caught fire, flames licking his back as he swung the axe in blind terror. But every direction led him back to the same clearing. The burning man stood unmoving, waiting for him. James fell to his knees, gasping, face streaked with ash and sweat. The axe slipped from his hands, and the circle closed. The charred figures leaned in, their cracked jaws opening at once. From every mouth, a single sound poured out, low, endless, like the hiss of a fire that would never die. The world went white, and James screamed with it. James froze, chest heaving. The radio pressed against his hip like a living thing. The voice slithered through the static, low, amused, like it already knew his answer. He yanked it free, thumb trembling on the button. Help me. The forest, it's burning. There are people. There... The voice cut him off, crisp as a match strike. Not people. Never were. Static swallowed the rest. Panic drove him forward. His boots hammered the soil, lungs raw with smoke. He pushed past tree after tree, but the forest betrayed him. Every path twisted back on itself. Every clearing looked the same. The fire wasn't spreading. It was waiting, guiding him, hurting him. James stumbled into another clearing, ash swirling like snow. In the dirt, he saw them again, footprints. Dozens, hundreds, each one seared black into the ground. They formed circles, spirals, pathways that led nowhere. His stomach nodded. These weren't tracks of wanderers. They were marks of ritual. From the trees, the charred figures stepped forward. Not rushing, not lunging, just walking with terrible patience, their hollow eyes reflecting the flames. James staggered back, nearly tripping over his own axe. His hand found the handle, but his grip was weak, his arms shaky. What good was steel against something that wasn't flesh? He tried to remember the tower, the safety, the radio calls, the endless green stretching below him. But the image was gone, swallowed in fire. All that remained was the sound. The endless crackle, the hiss of embers devouring air. The radio hissed again. Only this time, dozens of voices spoke at once. Male, female, young, old, layered over each other like a chorus. Seen the smoke yet? The words pulsed through his head in rhythm with the pounding of his heart. James clapped his hands over his ears, but the voices burrowed deeper, pressing against his skull. He staggered, dropped to his knees, dirt smearing his face as he gasped. The circle of figures closed tighter. Their mouths opened again, spilling not fire, not screams, but silence. A silence so heavy it crushed the air around him. And James realized in that terrible quiet that the forest didn't want him dead. It wanted him here. The Rangers chalked it up to a freak lightning strike. Tower must have gone up like tinder, they said, though the skies had been clear for weeks. The report was thin, clinical. No mention of voices, no mention of footprints scorched into the earth, no mention of James at all, except for the word missing. But in town, whispers spread. Folks at the diner claimed they saw strange light in the forest that week, orange and furious, but gone by morning. A hunter swore the trees smelled of smoke, even though no fires were reported. And one of the Rangers, off the record, muttered that he heard James's voice crackling faintly through the radio long after the tower was ash. By the time a new recruit climbed the rebuilt tower, the legend had already grown teeth. He laughed off the warnings, set down his pack, and looked out over the endless green. That night, just before 9, he spotted it. A column of smoke rising steady in the distance, black against the red sunset. He leaned forward, binoculars trembling in his hands, and there it was, clear as day. A man burning silently, arms outstretched as if waiting for him. The smoke vanished before he could blink. Now tell me, if you ever find yourself up in a tower like that, with nothing but trees below and silence all around, and you see smoke curling up where there shouldn't be any, do you climb down to investigate? Or do you sit still, clutch the radio, and pray the forest doesn't notice you watching? Because James did, and the forest never forgot. Thank you for listening to this story. If it sent a chill down your spine, do me a favor, like this video to help it spread, and subscribe so you never miss the next tale waiting in the dark. Share it with a friend who thinks they're brave enough to handle it. There's another story on your screen right now, one that might just keep you up tonight. I'll see you back here tomorrow, if you dare. The Midnight Train. You know how teenagers think they're untouchable? Like the world is just one big game, and they'll never lose? That was Ryan, 17, wiry with too much adrenaline, too little sense. He lived in a town where nothing ever happened. Just sagging porches, cracked sidewalks, and a single diner that closed by 10. Nights stretched forever, thick with heat and boredom. So when his parents fell asleep, Ryan slipped out. He moved like a shadow across the quiet streets, sneakers whispering on asphalt. His shortcut, always the same, was the abandoned train tracks on the edge of town. Nobody used them. They were rusted, half buried in weeds, leading nowhere. Kids whispered the tracks were cursed. 50 years ago, they said, the midnight train barreled through town one last time and derailed in fire. The crew, the passengers, gone. Since then, no trains, just steel bones cutting across forgotten land. But Ryan didn't buy ghost stories. He liked how the tracks felt, secret, dangerous. A place parents warned him not to go, which meant it was the perfect place to be. That night, though, the air felt heavy. Even the crickets stopped their shrill chorus when his phone blinked 12:47 a.m. He froze. For the first time, he noticed how still the world had become, like everything was waiting. Then he heard it, a whistle, flong, rising from the dark. Ryan laughed under his breath, trying to shake it off. Old pipes, he muttered. But the sound grew sharper, closer. And before he could convince himself otherwise, a pale glow bloomed on the horizon. Two beams cutting through the night, headlights. His chest tightened. The ground quivered beneath his shoes, a deep vibration humming through the rusted rails. And that's when Ryan realized he wasn't alone on the tracks. But when morning came, the story sounded too good to keep to himself. At the diner, with his friends half asleep over greasy eggs and flat sodas, Ryan leaned in, grinned sharp with adrenaline. You wouldn't believe it, he said. The midnight train, it's real. I saw it. His buddies groaned, rolled their eyes. One muttered, those tracks, They've been dead since our parents were kids. Another added, the last wreck burned the line down. Nobody rebuilt it. There's nothing out there. Ryan swore on his own life. He described the whistle, the sparks, the monstrous engine breathing fire like some iron beast. But the more he talked, the less they believed. Finally, his friend Jenna leaned in, eyes dark and steady. You shouldn't joke about that, she whispered. My granddad saw it once. He said the train doesn't just pass, it takes. The table went silent. Ryan forced a laugh, brushing it off, but something in Jenna's tone stuck like a splinter. All day, it gnawed at him. The way the headlights burned into his eyes, the way the rails shook, the way the night didn't feel like night anymore. By evening, he couldn't sit still. His parents watched TV in the living room, oblivious, while Ryan slipped back into the dark. The air was thicker that night. No wind, no bugs, just a heavy silence pressing on his ears. The moon hung low, swollen, and the rails gleamed faintly like veins of silver cutting through the earth. Ryan stood there, waiting. Midnight crawled past. Nothing. Just his own pulse hammering in his throat. He started to laugh at himself, turning to leave. Then it came, the whistle, shrill, piercing, louder than before. The horizon lit up, a white blaze cutting the dark. Headlights roared forward, swallowing the world. But this time, when Ryan dove for the weeds, there was nothing beneath. No dirt, no grass, just steel stretching in every direction. Tracks that didn't end, fire racing along them. Ryan staggered, eyes wide, as the train thundered toward him again. Its windows glowing red, faces pressed against the glass, faces screaming. He spun, desperate to leap clear, but the world had shifted. The old tracks weren't a shortcut anymore. They were a trap. The whistle screamed like a throat being ripped open. The world narrowed to two rails and the white-hot maw bearing down. Ryan's feet trembled, not from cold, but from a fear that tasted metallic on his tongue. He had always thought fear was something you laughed at later. Now it was a live thing, slapping him. The train was heat. Its engine coughed flame that licked the night, and the air around it hummed with a high note that vibrated his bones. Through the windows, faces pressed to the glass. Not quite human. Mouths moved, teeth glinting, eyes hollow and bright. They smiled and screamed. Ryan thought to run, to sprint along the ballast, find a shoulder, jump into the ditch. But there was no shoulder. The earth had been stripped, like a rug pulled free and only steel left. A metallic bang struck the car. A hand, pale, impossibly long, snapped through a cracked window, groping. It found his sleeve and clawed. The world slowed. The hand closed. Everything narrowed to that hand and the choice in his chest. Let go and be taken. Become the legend whispered in diners, or do the stupid human thing. Grab on. He lunged. Flesh met flesh. The fingers were colder than midnight, smelling of oil and pennies. The train jerked as if insulted, a violence that slammed the air. Ryan felt pulled with it, an impossible tug that threatened to wrench him off his feet. He dug his heels and shoved. The hand loosened and something clattered into his palm. A locket, warm and oddly familiar. He opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a photo smeared with soot. The face was his mother's, younger than he remembered, smiling like someone before everything went wrong. For a heartbeat, the passengers were ordinary, tear-stained, frightened, looking at him with a pleading that felt like accusation. Then the train vomited flame, surged, and vanished into the dark as if swallowed by night. Silence dropped. The rails cooled. Ryan stood, the locket heavy, breath ragged. He had reached into the thing that ate time and come away with proof. Proof and a promise. The choice he made, an arm thrown toward a window, a small act of theft from a monster, had changed him. It had opened a door that would not stay shut. He knew they would come for it, and that he had invited them. Someday soon. At first, they thought it was just another brush fire. Dry summer grass catching under the heat of July, maybe a cigarette flicked from a passing car. But when the smoke thinned, the truth sat there waiting. The blackened rails, glowing faintly with heat, and the burned circle on the earth where Ryan should have been. The sheriff stood with his hat low, boot grinding into the ash. He didn't call it a crime scene, didn't call for backup. He only spat into the dirt and said, "Tracks have been dead 50 years. Dead things don't burn on their own." The deputy shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting anywhere but the rails. By noon, the whole town knew. Mothers kept their kids inside. Old men at the diner sipped coffee in silence, glancing at the door, like they expected someone to walk through it, someone who never would. Ryan's friends sat in their usual booth, staring at the empty space beside them. One of them swore they still smelled smoke on his jacket, though he hadn't been near the tracks. Jenna didn't say a word, just twisted a napkin until it tore in her hands. At Ryan's house, his mother stood in the doorway, eyes vacant, refusing to believe the sheriff's mumbled explanation. She kept repeating, "He's just out with his friends. He'll be back for dinner." No one had the heart to argue. But in quiet corners, the whispers grew. People spoke of the midnight train again, voices hushed but urgent. Some said Ryan had been taken, claimed by the passengers still trapped on their endless ride. Others swore he jumped aboard willingly, leaving the living world behind. A few muttered about the locket that no one had seen, but that someone swore he'd been clutching the last time he was spotted. Night came heavy, pressing against windows. Families double-locked doors. And yet, faintly down by the abandoned tracks, some swore they heard it. The whistle, long and low, cutting the dark like a warning. And somewhere, though no one could prove it, there were those who claimed they saw him. A figure in the glare of phantom headlights. A boy standing on the rails, staring back at the town that had never believed him. Not gone, not alive, something in between. The town moved on, the way small towns do. New gossip replaced old, the diner changed its menu, and Ryan's name faded into the same hush reserved for things parents warned their kids about but never explained. The tracks grew colder by day, weeds reclaiming the earth. But at night they pulsed with something wrong, something hungry. Some swore they saw the glow from their windows, the flash of white headlights cutting across the horizon where no road existed. Others claimed they heard the whistle in their dreams, waking with the taste of smoke in their throats. And every so often, a traveler passing through town would mention seeing a boy on the rails. Thin, shadow-eyed, holding something that caught the light like a locket. Ryan had been restless, reckless. Now, he was restless still, but bound to the steel veins that stitched the dark. He had reached for the train. Doing so, it had claimed him, changed him. He wasn't the town's troublemaker anymore. He was part of its legend. And legends don't die, they wait. The sheriff never returned to the site. His deputies wouldn't patrol near the tracks after midnight. And Jenna, she left flowers at the edge of the burned earth, whispering prayers into the soil. She said sometimes she felt eyes watching her, familiar and sad, as though Ryan hadn't chosen to leave, but couldn't find his way back. Now they say, if you walk near those tracks past midnight, you'll hear it too. The whistle, the grinding steel. And if you're unlucky, if the fire chooses you, you'll hear a boy's scream, sharp and endless, carried on the smoke. So tell me, if you heard that whistle tonight at 12:47 a.m., would you stand and watch? Or would you run and pray the fire doesn't follow? Thank you for listening to this story. If it sent a chill down your spine, do me a favor. Like this video so more people find it, and subscribe for more stories told night after night. Share it with someone who thinks ghost trains are just old fairy tales. I promise they'll think twice. Another story waits for you on the screen. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The Baby Monitor. You ever notice how silence in a house with a newborn never really feels like silence? It's the kind of quiet that's alive, breathing, twitching, waiting for the next cry. A fragile calm, like glass balanced on a ledge. Claire and Jason lived in that kind of silence. First-time parents, proud and deliriously tired, in their two-story colonial tucked neatly at the end of a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. Nights were a ritual. Feed the baby, rock her gently until the little body softened, then lay her in the crib upstairs. They'd tiptoe back down the hallway like burglars, each breath held, praying she wouldn't stir. On the night it all began, the Baby Monitor blinked softly on the nightstand. A plastic guardian angel, a glowing promise that distance was no danger. Jason joked sometimes that it was like having a second set of ears, an invisible babysitter. Claire liked the comfort. Neither of them thought twice about the faint crackle of static that occasionally bled through. It was almost 1 a.m. The neighborhood slept. Their world was finally still. They sat downstairs together, Claire scrolling through her phone, Jason nursing a lukewarm beer, both silently grateful for the lull. Upstairs, their daughter cooed once, then settled, and then it came. Not the cry of a baby, not the restless murmur of a child dreaming, a sound older, deeper, voice, low, hoarse, humming the bones of a lullaby. Jason froze with the bottle at his lips. Claire's eyes snapped to the monitor, where the little green lights pulsed in rhythm with the sound. For one fragile heartbeat, their exhaustion told them it was a trick, a radio signal, maybe, interference from a neighbor's cordless phone. But the baby giggled, the sweet, high-pitched sound of recognition, and the voice kept singing. Jason's breath hitched. He scooped the baby up, holding her like proof she was real, alive, untouched. Claire pressed her trembling palm to the crib sheet, cold, too cold, as if she had been gone longer than a few minutes. They searched the room, closet doors yanked open, curtains whipped aside. Nothing, no broken glass, no muddy footprints, no reason a child could vanish upstairs and reappear downstairs. Yet the humming, that voice, it was real. They had both heard it. Claire checked the locks on every window. Jason paced the hallway, listening for creaks in the floorboards, for anything out of place. The house gave nothing back. When they returned to their room, the monitor blinked steadily, silent, innocent. The baby breathed softly between them, her tiny fist curled against Jason's chest. "You saw it too," Claire whispered. Not a question, a confirmation of their shared madness. Jason nodded, throat tight. He wanted to say something logical, radio interference, maybe the neighbor's TV, but the words turned to ash before they left his mouth. Logic didn't explain why their baby had moved. They tried to sleep. They failed. Every flicker of static from the monitor jolted them awake. Every shadow across the wall turned sinister. The next night, they swore to stay awake, to catch it. At 12:47, the monitor hissed alive, a lullaby, faint, off-key. Claire leaned close, her knuckles white around the device. "It's the same song." Jason hushed her, though his own heart hammered. They waited, breath shallow. The humming grew louder, clearer, threading itself into the room like smoke. Then light laughter, their daughters, soft, sweet, answering someone. Jason's body surged with adrenaline. He bolted for the stairs, 2 steps at a time. Claire followed, nearly tripping in her panic. The nursery door creaked open. Empty again. This time, the crib was rocking. Back and forth, slow, deliberate. Jason froze in the doorway, his skin crawling. Claire stifled a scream. And then, the monitor in her hand crackled. A whisper, low and ragged. "She's mine." Jason's blood iced over. He snatched the monitor, staring at its dead screen, glowing faint green, though the cord dangled limp on the floor. The voice bled through louder now, closer, intimate. Not carried by static, but whispering straight into the room. Claire stirred, her eyes opened, unfocused. "Jason, do you hear it?" He hushed her, pressing the baby tighter against his chest. "Stay here." His voice cracked like dry wood. He stepped into the hallway. The air was cold, thick with the sour scent of damp earth. The hum deepened, following him, threading its way down the hall like a shadow. The nursery door was ajar, rocking faintly on its hinges. Jason pushed it open, fists clenched, every muscle begging him to turn back. Inside, the crib rocked, empty, again. But this time not by some invisible hand. A shape hunched beside it, pale, tall, skin stretched thin like old paper, its head bowed, face hidden as it crooned that broken lullaby. Jason's breath stuttered. "Get away from her." The figure lifted its head, eyes black and bottomless. A grin split its face, too wide, too wet. "She's mine," it whispered, the same voice from the monitor. "I've been watching since the day she was born. You only thought she was yours." Jason staggered back, bile rising. His fight-or-flight screamed for escape, but behind him, Claire gasped. She was in the doorway now, clutching the baby, paralyzed. The thing rose to its full height, towering over them, its grin stretching into something jagged. "You cannot keep her from me. Not forever." Jason's body moved before thought. He grabbed the monitor, still glowing, still whispering, and hurled it into the crib. The device shattered, sparks crackling against the wood. The figure shrieked, a sound like glass breaking inside his skull. The walls vibrated. The lights above burst with a pop, plunging the nursery into darkness. Jason grabbed Claire's arm, dragging her back down the hall. The baby screamed, the sound pure, terrified. Behind them, the humming returned, low, steady, rising with every step they took. Jason knew, with a sick clarity, that this was no break-in, no man, no stranger. This thing hadn't come into their home. It had always been there. Jason sat upright in bed, every nerve wired raw. The sound didn't come through speakers now. It came through the walls, the air, the house, a vibration too low to be mistaken for anything natural. Claire clutched the baby tighter, whispering, "Tell me you hear that." Her voice was already breaking, as if she knew the answer. Jason forced himself out of bed. Each step toward the corner felt like wading through water. The humming was there, faint, deliberate, rising like a lullaby sung from the bottom of a well. He flicked on the lamp. Nothing. Just shadows stretching where shadows should be. But the sound didn't stop. They didn't sleep that night, or the night after. Every creak of floorboards, every hiss of the pipes, twisted into the echo of that hum. Jason stayed awake with coffee in trembling hands, his eyes raw from watching doorways and corners that refused to stay still. Claire grew pale, jumpy at every sound, clutching their child like the world was trying to pry her away. When family visited, Jason forced a smile. Claire rehearsed excuses, sleepless nights, stress, the usual burdens of new parents. No one noticed the way Jason's hand never strayed far from the baby, or the way Claire flinched when silence stretched too long. The police didn't come back. Why would they? No evidence, no reason, just a broken monitor and parents too scared to admit what they'd heard. Jason tried to rationalize stress, hallucinations, exhaustion, but then the baby started changing. She'd laugh at nothing, reaching for empty corners. Her eyes tracked movements Jason couldn't see. Sometimes she hummed, the same fractured lullaby. Claire wept when she heard it, rocking their daughter, begging her to stop. Jason only sat frozen, the weight of dread pressing against his ribs. Because deep down, he knew the truth. Destroying the monitor hadn't ended anything. It had only torn down the walls. And now whatever had been watching through the plastic eyes of that device was in the room with them. They stopped sleeping the way people sleep when they believe the world is safe. Sleep became a series of shallow crossings, dozing, waking, scanning. Nights folded into mornings without the comfort of forgetting. Claire and Jason learned the shapes of their house again, not by touch, but by the sounds it made when something else was awakening. The lullaby came at 1 a.m. like a clockwork thief, sliding through walls and settling into the corners, patient as rot. Sometimes it pulsed in the hallway, a soft thing that made Jason's skin crawl. Sometimes it pooled under the nursery door and hummed there for a long time, as if deciding whether to wake the baby. And sometimes it hovered at the foot of their bed, a whisper too close to breathe around. They tried ceremonies that felt like defiance, white noise machines, candles, small prayers muttered in the dark. They moved the crib, bought another monitor from another brand, left lights on, left the front and back doors locked and double locked. Whatever it was learned around them, it adapted. The lullaby threaded through different frequencies, found new ways to touch the house. The baby watched shadows as if she could read them. She laughed at the corner where nothing stood, and sometimes reached into the air with tiny, deliberate hands. Claire cried a lot in the kitchen, silently, while Jason pretended to script explanations for friends and family. Postpartum, he said once to a kindly neighbor, and the neighbor brought casseroles and prayers and left, satisfied. Months passed. Their friends called less. The police file grew thin and polite. Sleep deprivation sharpened the edges of daily life. Arguments over dishes, long silences over coffee, the small betrayals of two people who no longer trusted a home to be only a home. Jason stopped leaving the house without looking back twice. Claire stopped reading in bed because the pages felt like invitations. They both became very good at noticing small things. A scent like rain on dry dirt, the way curtains shivered when no wind stirred. The baby grew. She learned to walk, to say a handful of words, to sing fragments of that same warped lullaby in a voice that made Claire's blood stop and Jason's fists clench. When she hummed it in the grocery store, strangers smiled and thought it was a cute thing toddlers did. When she hummed it at night with her eyes closed and her little lips moving like a mapmaker tracing routes none of them wanted to follow, Claire would swallow hard and press her face into her child's hair until the shape of the house blurred. They never turned the monitor on again. The plastic lay in the trash, wrapped in 2 heavy garbage bags, a small, guilty funeral. But the sound kept coming, because this was not about a device. It was about a presence that used a device once and had found other ways to be near. It settled like a promise, patient and inexorable. So when you tuck a child in tonight and the house breathes and you think the monitor is only tracking breaths, remember that some things learn how to watch without eyes. If you hear a lullaby in the dark that is not yours, do not laugh it off as the world being clever. Do not smile and call it interference. Turn the light on, hold the child close, and for God's sake, listen to where the sound is coming from. If this story gripped you, hit like to support the channel, subscribe for daily stories, and share this with someone who loves being kept awake. Thank you for listening and watching. There is another video on your screen that will keep the night company. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The House Call. They say the country is quiet at night, peaceful, but peace is only comforted when you're not alone with your thoughts. Take Henry, an old farmer out on the edge of town. His house stood crooked against the dark horizon, its paint long peeled, its porch sagging like a tired old man's shoulders. It was the kind of place that remembered winters with cracked boards and whistling drafts, where the silence after sundown pressed so hard it felt like weight on the chest. Henry had grown used to that silence. Since his wife passed, 3 years gone now, he'd filled it with her voice. Not really, of course, but in whispers. Sometimes, when the loneliness dug too deep, he'd sit in her rocking chair and speak into the dark, pretending her answer would float back, pretending her shadow still warmed the corner by the fireplace. The neighbors said he was fading. The kind of man who stayed behind while time walked on without him. But Henry still did his chores, fed the hens, tended the corn, kept the routine like clockwork, because routine was safer than thinking. Lately, though, even the routine couldn't guard it. At first, it was the porch creaking under invisible steps. Then the sound of boots dragging across dirt, stopping just shy of the door. He told himself it was the wind, always the wind. Because wind was easier than the truth, that something had started visiting him after midnight. And then came the knocks. 3 sharp raps on the farmhouse door at 3 in the morning. Always 3, always precise. The first time, Henry didn't move. The second, he loaded the shotgun and sat breathing in the dark until the sun rose. The third time, he dared to look through the peephole. And what he saw was not the wind. It was a man in an old doctor's coat, long and gray, holding a black bag in one hand, his face pale, his voice low and gravelly. "I've come for your wife," the stranger said. But Henry's wife had been dead for years. The porch was empty. Cold night air swept in, stinging Henry's skin. The boards creaked under his boots as he stepped out, shotgun raised, eyes darting. Nothing but the field stretching into darkness. Nothing but the wind moaning through the trees. But there were footprints, muddy, heavy, pressed deep into the wood. They trailed from the steps to the porch rail, and then stopped, just stopped, as if the figure had vanished into thin air. Henry's chest tightened. He backed inside, bolted the door, and sat in his chair with the shotgun across his lap until dawn. Sleep never came. The next morning, he told himself it was a dream. It had to be. A trick of grief, or the mind playing games in the small hours. But when he opened the door again, the prints were still there. Dark mud smeared across the porch like bruises. That night, Henry poured himself a drink. 1 drink became 3. By midnight, he sat in the living room with the shotgun propped against his knee, eyes glued to the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. 3 o'clock. The pounding started again, louder this time. The walls rattled with each strike. Henry staggered to the door, half drunk, half awake. Through the peephole, the doctor was back. Same coat, same bag, same voice hissing through the crack. "I've come for your wife," Henry shouted through the door, voice cracking. "She's dead. Leave her be." But the figure didn't move. He just kept standing there, breathing heavy, fogging the glass with each word. "You'll see her soon." Rage burned through Henry's fear. He unbolted the door and flung it wide, shotgun raised. But again, nothing, just footprints. This time they stretched farther, across the yard, into the dirt. He followed them with the barrel of the gun, but they ended halfway across the grass, cut off like a torn page. That night, Henry didn't bother sleeping. He sat on the porch till sunrise, watching the yard, waiting for the thing to return. But by the 3rd night, the knocks came again. And this time, the voice called his name, Henry. Not her name anymore. His. Henry's breath fogged the glass as he pressed his face closer, shotgun trembling in his hands. His ears strained for any hint of movement. Wind in the trees, the shuffle of boots. But there was nothing, just the prints. They shone wet in the moonlight, glistening like blood, fresh, too fresh. Henry's heart thudded against his ribs. He stepped out onto the porch, barrel aimed straight at the darkness. His boots landed right inside the stranger's steps. 1, 2, 3. The prince stopped, but Henry didn't. He leaned forward, peering into the field. The corn stood motionless, stalks blackened against the sky. The barn squatted in silence, roof sagging under years of weight. No movement, no sound. And then he heard it. Not a footstep, not a knock, a whisper. Henry. It came from everywhere at once, behind him, inside the house, right against his ear. His whole body jolted. He swung the shotgun, finger white on the trigger. "Show yourself," he barked, but his voice broke halfway through. The whisper came again, low, dragging, gravel wrapped in smoke. "Henry, it's time." The door slammed behind him with a crack like a gunshot. The porch shuddered under his feet. He spun back, chest heaving, only to see the doctor, standing in the doorway, coat gray as ash, bag in one hand, face pale, eyes hollow. "I've come," the man rasped, "for you." Henry froze. The gun shook in his grip. He could smell the man, earth and rot, the damp of open graves. His finger curled around the trigger. He thought of his wife, her laugh, her rocking chair waiting in the corner. For one wild moment he believed. If he pulled that trigger, maybe he could drive this thing back. Maybe he could hold on to what little life he had left. But the doctor didn't move, he just waited. Still as stone. Patient. Henry screamed, raised the shotgun, and fired. The blast lit the porch, the field, the night itself. White fire against the dark. When the smoke cleared, the doorway was empty. Only the muddy prints remained, and they were leading into Henry's house. The sheriff was the first to step into the farmhouse. He'd known Henry for 40 years, shared beers with him at the Legion Hall, bought corn from his stand every summer. Now he stood over the old man's body, hat clutched in both hands, throat tight. Henry sat in his chair like he'd been waiting, shotgun across his knees, mouth slightly open as though he'd been about to say something or answer something. His eyes, though, those eyes weren't the eyes of a man drifting off in sleep. They were wide, startled, staring at the door. There wasn't a mark on him. No bruise, no cut, no sign of struggle. His heart had simply stopped. The doctor from town signed the death certificate, shook his head, muttered about age and stress. But the deputies whispered about something else. They pointed to the porch boards where muddy footprints still stained the wood. Heavy, uneven. They stretched from the door to the chair inside, and then stopped, as if the visitor had taken root right there. The neighbors said Henry had been fading for weeks. They told stories of him muttering to himself in the fields, sitting on the porch through the dead of night, waiting for something. One swore she saw a man standing at Henry's gate just before dawn, tall, pale, coat flapping in the wind. When she blinked, he was gone. They buried Henry beside his wife on the hill. A modest funeral, quiet words, the kind of send-off small towns know by heart. People shook their heads, said at least he'd gone peacefully. But the whispers didn't stop. Because when the undertaker closed Henry's eyes, he swore he felt them twitch beneath his fingers. Like the old man was still seeing something standing at the door. And late at night, when the wind died and the country grew still, some folks claimed they could hear it echoing across the fields. 3 sharp knocks, always at 3 in the morning. In the weeks after Henry's death, the farm grew quieter than it had ever been. The chickens went untended, the corn shriveled, and the rocking chair on the porch never moved again. But the neighbors swore the house wasn't empty. More than one claimed to see a figure drifting up the lane at night. A tall man in a long coat, bag swinging at his side. He never knocked when anyone was watching. He only came when the world was silent, when the hour was darkest, when a house was heavy with grief. Some say Henry brought it on himself, answering the door when he should have stayed in bed, speaking to a thing that wasn't meant to be spoken to. Others insist the doctor would have come anyway. That's what he does. Makes his rounds, same as any physician, but his patients don't wake up better. What unsettles the town most isn't that Henry died. Old men die. It's that there wasn't a mark on him. No warning, no struggle, just a stillness. Like his heart had been signed off, his name scratched on a ledger only the doctor carried. And now, people bolt their doors tighter than before. They whisper prayers before sleep. Some keep candles burning at night, hoping the light will ward him off. But still, Every so often, just before dawn, someone claims they hear it. 3 knocks, precise, cold, patient, the sound of a doctor making a house call. So tell me, if you heard knocking at your door at 3 a.m. and a voice said, "I've come for you," would you open it? Or would you sit in the dark, clutching the silence, and pray his rounds pass you by? Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If it left a chill in your bones, do me a favor. Like this video to help more people discover it. Subscribe so you never miss a tale, and share it with someone who needs a good scare tonight. There's another story waiting for you on your screen right now. Go ahead, click it, and I'll meet you there. Until then, sleep well. I'll see you back tomorrow. The dog that wasn't there. You ever notice how the road feels different at night? Not just quiet, alive. Every shadow looks like it's waiting. Every curve hides something you don't want to meet. That's where we find Tom, a trucker with 20 years on the highway. He's tough, no doubt, but tired. Nights get long, coffee only does so much. His biggest fear? Not ghosts, not monsters, falling asleep at the wheel. That's how truckers die. But tonight, it isn't sleep that's coming for him. It's something else. The stretch of road is flat, endless, somewhere between Amarillo and nowhere. The sky is ink black, the stars blurred by heat waves rolling off asphalt even at midnight. The CB radio hisses with static. Tom drums his fingers on the steering wheel to keep himself awake. That's when he sees it. A dog. Black as the road itself. It bolts across his headlights, fast, sudden, eyes like 2 burning coals. Instinct kicks in. Tom jerks the wheel. His trailer fishtails. Tires scream. He barely manages to straighten out before slamming to a stop on the shoulder. His chest hammers like a jackhammer. He curses, wipes the sweat from his forehead. But when he looks back into the glow of his headlights, there's no dog. Nothing. Just empty road stretching forever. And here's the thing. Tom doesn't spook easy. He's seen deer, coyotes, even a naked man once running down a Kansas highway at 3 in the morning. But this rattles him. Because for a split second, he swears the dog didn't run through the light. It stood in it, solid, watching him, then gone. That's when a pair of headlights appear in his rear view. Another truck slowing, pulling over behind him. And the driver, face pale, eyes wide, leans out and shouts, "Hey, you saw it too, didn't you?" The other trucker climbs down from his cab, boots crunching on gravel. He's wiry, older, with a face lined from decades of road miles. His hands shake as he lights a cigarette. "I damn near rolled my rig," the man mutters, exhaling smoke that glows orange in the night. Black dog, right in front of me, looks straight at me like it knew my name. Tom swallows, throat dry. He doesn't want to believe it, but the words gnaw at him. He's heard truck stop legends, phantoms on back roads, hitchhikers that vanish from the cab. But this isn't some story traded over lukewarm coffee. This was real, too real. The stranger leans closer, lowering his voice. Locals call it the devil's dog. You see it once, you don't make it past the week. Highway curse, that's what they say. Tom laughs, sharp and bitter. Highway curse, Jesus. You expect me to buy that? But even as he spits the words, his hands tremble. The man flicks his cigarette into the dark. Believe what you want, just watch yourself. He climbs back into his cab, and soon the red glow of his taillights fades into the distance. Tom stands there a long time, the Texas night pressing in heavy. No sound but the insects humming and his own pulse in his ears. Finally, he gets back behind the wheel, tells himself it was nothing. A stray dog, a trick of light, his tired brain making monsters out of shadows. But the road doesn't let him forget. At the next diner, when Tom pushes through the door for coffee, every head turns. Old men at the counter go quiet. A waitress with weary eyes stares at him just a second too long before pouring. He overhears 2 locals whispering near the jukebox. Black dog's been seen again. Poor bastard, doesn't know what's coming. Tom's gut knots. He tells himself not to listen, but the weight of their silence clings to him. Every mile after that feels like a countdown. 3 nights later, the storm hits. Sheets of rain, wipers fighting to keep up. The highway's slick and treacherous. And there, through the blur of water, Tom sees it again. The dog, standing in the middle of the road, waiting. The rain comes down in sheets, hammering the windshield like 1,000 fists. Tom grips the wheel so hard his knuckles shine bone white, wipers thrashing left and right in a losing battle against the storm. Every muscle in his body hums with tension. He's wired, overcaffeinated, but his eyelids feel heavy, his brain thick as tar. And then he sees it. The dog, blacker than the night itself, standing dead center in his lane, eyes glowing like two furnaces in the downpour. It doesn't move, doesn't flinch, just stares. Tom's breath rips from his chest. He slams the brakes, the tires scream, the trailer whips sideways. The world turns into chaos, metal shrieking, rubber shredding, the deafening roar of 18 tons of steel breaking loose. For one horrifying second, the cab lifts, the headlights catch those burning eyes again through the sheets of rain. The dog isn't running this time, it's waiting. The rig jackknifes. Sparks shower as the trailer gouges the pavement. Tom fights the wheel, his whole body straining, heart tearing through his ribs. He thinks of his kids, his ex-wife, the quiet apartment waiting back in Amarillo. He doesn't want to die here, not on some forgotten stretch of blacktop cursed by a ghost dog. And then the crash. The sound is like the sky splitting in two. Metal screams, glass bursts, the cab spins, spins, spins. The world tilts sideways, then silence slams down, broken only by the hiss of rain and the ticking of cooling metal. Tom crawls free, body broken but alive. The storm howls around him. In the shattered beams of his rig's headlights, the road lies empty. No dog, no eyes, nothing. But then, far off, cutting through the rain, headlights. Another truck swerving too late, a sickening crunch, a burst of fire, a horn locked in one endless cry. It's him, the other driver, the one from that night, the man who warned him. Tom staggers to his knees, staring at the wreckage burning down the highway. And in the corner of his vision, just for a heartbeat, he sees it. The black dog, sitting calmly at the edge of the road, its cold red eyes locked on him. Watching, waiting, the wreck makes the morning papers. Fatal crash on Highway 61. They print the other driver's name, his hometown, his family left behind. Tom's name doesn't make it past the police report. Just another survivor, stitched up, shaken, sent back to the road. But the whispers follow him. At truck stops, at diners, at fuel stations. Men glance at him sideways, their voices dropping low when he passes. That's the guy who saw the black dog. Some cross themselves. Others won't meet his eyes. Tom shrugs it off out loud, but inside he feels hollowed out. Every time he starts the engine, his gut tightens like a fist. He drives slower now, eyes glued to the shoulder, scanning the dark for movement. Coffee cools in the cup holder untouched. Cigarettes burn to the filter one after another, smoke curling into the stale air of the cab. Nights are the worst. The rain hisses on the glass, the CB crackles with ghost chatter, and the hum of the tires becomes something else in his head. Something rhythmic, like the padding of paws on wet asphalt. And always that question gnaws at him. Was it fate? Some curse sewn into the highway itself? Or just exhaustion playing cruel tricks on men who live their lives in motion? The insurance adjuster calls it an accident. The sheriff shrugs it off as bad weather, bad luck. The papers say coincidence. But Tom, he doesn't believe in coincidences anymore. Not after the way the other driver looked that night, pale and certain. Not after watching his rig burn while those eyes, those impossible red eyes, flickered in the rain. He tells himself he'll quit, park the rig for good. But the bills pile up, and the road calls him back like it always does. So here he sits again behind the wheel of a loaner truck, hands trembling around the gear shift, eyes fixed on the stretch of blacktop ahead. The night is alive, breathing, waiting. And in the reflection of his windshield, just for a heartbeat, he swears he sees it again. Two glowing coals burning in the dark, watching, waiting. The weeks roll by, but for Tom, the road is never the same. Every mile feels heavy, stretched thin with silence. The hum of the engine no longer comforts, it taunts him, a reminder of how quickly it can all be ripped away. He drives slower now, cautious, but it isn't just fear of another wreck. It's the sense that he's being watched. Sometimes when the sky is clear and the road lies wide open, he almost convinces himself it was all in his head. A trick of fatigue, a coincidence wrapped in bad luck. But then he catches it. A flicker in the corner of his eye, a shadow too solid to be nothing. The silhouette of a dog just at the edge of the shoulder, never chasing, never leaving, always there. He thinks about the other driver, about the locals at the diner who went quiet the second he walked in, about the way the stories always end the same. Someone doesn't make it home. The curse isn't about seeing the black dog. It's about what happens after, the waiting, the wondering, the knowing. Tom doesn't talk about it anymore. He doesn't joke with waitresses, doesn't share war stories with other truckers at midnight diners. He's changed, carved down into someone smaller, quieter, carrying a weight no one else wants to touch. But on those long, empty stretches of road, when the night presses in and the highway breathes, he feels it. The eyes, the watching, like the black dog isn't behind him at all, but ahead, waiting for him to catch up. So tell me, if you're ever out there, alone on a midnight highway, and a black dog steps into your headlights, would you keep driving, or would you pull over and pray it isn't looking back at you? Thanks for riding through this story with me. If it left a chill in your bones, hit that like button. It helps this channel grow and reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe for daily stories that will keep you up at night, and share this with someone who loves a good scare. There's another tale waiting for you right now on your screen. Go ahead, click it. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The wrong number. You ever notice how the worst nights always start off ordinary? Meet Daniel, 19. Just another college kid, drowning in textbooks, Red Bull cans stacked like trophies on his desk. He isn't special. He's just exhausted, over-caffeinated, and chasing a passing grade like his life depends on it. It's late, 2 a.m. late. The kind of hour when campus feels like a graveyard, silent except for the hum of vending machines and the occasional squeak of sneakers in the hallway. Daniel's roommate snores from the top bunk, the kind of deep animal snore that makes you wonder how he's still alive. Daniel keeps reading, eyes half shut, brain hanging by a thread, and then his phone buzzes. Not a text, a call. He glances at the clock, 2:13 a.m., unknown number. He almost ignores it, but something about the silence in the room makes him reach for the phone. Hello? His voice is a whisper, the line hisses like static, and then so faint he almost misses it, a woman's voice. Daniel. Just his name. That's it, soft, familiar, almost intimate. He freezes. It's probably a prank, he tells himself. Somebody from the dorm screwing with him. He hangs up, shakes it off. But then it rings again. Same time, 2:13, same number. And when he answers, the voice is sharper, clearer, like it's standing inside his room. Daniel, I can see you. He spins in his chair, heart hammering, eyes darting to the window, the door, the shadowed corners of the dorm. Nothing. Just silence, thick as tar. That's when he notices the reflection in his laptop screen, not his own, a pale outline behind him, smiling, and the phone still pressed to his ear, whispering his name. Daniel dropped the receiver like it had burned him. It clattered against the floor, swinging on its cord like a noose. His pulse roared in his ears. That wasn't possible. Phones didn't work without power, but the voice kept breathing. Daniel. He stumbled back, almost tripping over the mountain of textbooks. His roommate snored above, oblivious. For one desperate second, Daniel thought about shaking him awake, but something inside told him not to. Like if he pulled another soul into this, the voice would only get louder. He grabbed the phone and shoved it under a pillow. Smothered. Silence. Relief cracked across his chest, fragile but real. He sat down, laughing nervously, shaking his head at himself. Stress, that's all. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep. He pulled his notes back into his lap, tried to force his eyes over the words. Then the buzzing started. Not from the phone, from his desk. His laptop screen flickered, glitched, then filled with white noise, lines of static scrolling across, and then letters typed out like invisible hands were working the keys. Look behind you. Daniel's breath caught. He couldn't move. Every muscle in his body locked as if his bones had frozen. He forced himself to turn, inch by inch. Nothing. The dark room was just that, a room. His roommate. The clutter, the cracked window. Then the laptop chimed again. A new line typed itself, steady, deliberate. I like your red shirt. Daniel's stomach dropped. He looked down. Red t-shirt, damp with sweat now. That's when the phone rang again. Not just the one on the desk, every phone on the floor. Landlines, cell phones, a chorus, shrieking at once. The sound flooded the hallway, echoing off the cinder block walls like an alarm only for him. Daniel pressed his hands to his ears, shaking his head, shouting for it to stop. But his phone kept vibrating on the desk, screen glowing with the number. The caller ID stopped his breath cold. It wasn't unknown. It was his own number, calling him, and it would not stop. Daniel froze, words dying in his throat. His roommate wasn't joking. His face was too pale, too hollow. But before Daniel could answer, the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, then cut out completely, plunging them both into darkness. From the black came the sound. Not a ring this time, a whisper, the same voice, soft and wet, curling around his ear. Daniel! He spun, heart hammering. The whisper wasn't coming from the room, it was everywhere. Walls, ceiling, the hollow belly of the dorm itself. His roommate clutched his arm, whispering, "Do you hear that?" The voice grew louder, clearer, no longer hiding behind static. It recited word for word Daniel's thoughts. The words screaming in his skull, panicked, desperate. "Run, run, run. Stop it!" Daniel roared into the dark, though his voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" The answer came in a whisper so sharp it might as well have been a knife. Answer. His phone, lying where he'd thrown it, lit up in the hallway. Its cracked screen glowed like a single eye in the dark. 2:13 a.m. again. Always 2:13. The call was still coming in from his own number. The ringing filled the silence. His roommate backed away, shaking his head, mouthing, "Don't." But Daniel couldn't help himself. His legs moved on their own, dragging him closer. Every step felt heavier, like the floor itself was pulling him in. His hand reached out, trembling toward the glowing screen. "Don't answer it," his roommate whispered, voice breaking. Daniel's fingers hovered over the phone. And then, as if some part of him had already decided, he pressed accept. The world collapsed into silence for one endless beat, nothing. No ringing, no whispers, no roommates breathing, just silence so deep it pressed into his skull. Then, from the receiver, his own voice, flat, cold, inhuman. "I told you I could see you." And in that moment, Daniel realized he wasn't the one answering the call. He was the one who had been called. Daniel's stomach twisted. The numbers on the screen glared back at him like a wound that wouldn't close. 2:13 a.m. Always the same. He wanted to crush the phone under his heel, grind it to pieces, but some part of him couldn't move, couldn't look away. Behind him, his roommate hovered in the doorway, pale as a ghost. "Man, you look like you've seen something." His voice was low, cautious, like he was speaking to someone balancing on the edge of a cliff. Daniel turned, his lips trembling, but no words came. What could he say? That the phone knew him better than he knew himself? That his own voice had crawled out of the receiver like a hand reaching from the grave? His roommate shook his head, stepping back into the hall. "I swear, your phone never rang." He tried to sound steady, but the way his eyes darted, the way his fingers fidgeted with the doorframe, betrayed him. He had heard something. Maybe not the call, but the whispers. The kind of sound you don't admit to because saying it aloud might make it real. Daniel crouched, picked up the phone with shaking hands. The glass cut into his palm, sharp, small lines of red beading on his skin. He didn't notice. His thumb hovered over the call log. Every entry was the same. Missed call. 2:13 a.m. from Daniel. Page after page, dozens, hundreds. His chest tightened until he thought his ribs would snap. He hurled the phone at the wall. It cracked in two, plastic guts spilling out across the tile. For the first time that night, silence felt real. Heavy. Absolute. But then his laptop chimed. A single notification box glowing against the dark screen. Incoming call. Daniel. His breath caught. He slammed the lid shut, but the ringing didn't stop. It echoed through the speakers, muffled, insistent, as if the sound wasn't coming from the machine at all, but from inside the room itself. His roommate was gone now. The hall empty. The silence broken only by that steady, shrill tone. Daniel pressed his hands to his ears, rocking on the floor, whispering to himself, "It isn't real. It isn't real." But he knew better. Because when the sound finally cut off, his voicemail pinged. One new message. The timestamp glowed like a scar. 2:13 a.m. Daniel never slept in that dorm room again. The next morning, he packed his things in silence, eyes hollow, movement sharp and mechanical like he was afraid to stop moving. His roommate didn't ask questions, didn't even try. He'd seen enough in Daniel's face to know there were no answers worth hearing. But the phone he couldn't escape. He threw the shattered pieces in the trash, dropped them in the dumpster behind the cafeteria. He even watched the garbage truck haul it away days later. Yet still, every night, his new phone vibrated at exactly 2:13 a.m. No number on the screen this time. Just one word, Daniel. He tried turning the phone off. He tried leaving it at a friend's place. He even smashed the new one with a hammer. Didn't matter. The call always found him. And the worst part? He doesn't answer it. He doesn't have to. Because every night, at the exact same time, he hears his own voice whispering back at him from the dark corners of his room, repeating the same words. I told you I could see you. Daniel stopped being ordinary after that night. He stopped being anything at all. Some say he dropped out of school. Others swear they still see him walking the campus at night, staring at his phone, pale and hollow-eyed, waiting for the next call that never really ends. And the number? Always the same. His own. So tell me, when your phone buzzes in the middle of the night and you see your own name glowing on the screen, would you dare to answer? Or will you let it ring, knowing that ignoring it doesn't make it stop? Because Daniel learned the truth. Some calls aren't meant to be answered. Some calls aren't meant to be ignored either. They're just meant to keep coming. If this story got under your skin, hit that like button to support the channel and help push this video out to more people who love chilling tales like this one. Don't forget to subscribe for daily stories and share this with someone who needs a good scare tonight. Thanks for listening and watching. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The Window Scratcher. You ever hear something in the night and try to laugh it off? Probably just a tree branch. Probably just the wind. That's how it always begins. Small towns, dark nights, and people convincing themselves nothing's wrong. Sarah was the kind of girl who always believed in fresh starts. 24, just finished college, burned out from city traffic, neighbors screaming through paper-thin walls, sirens every hour. So when she found a cheap cabin out on the edge of nowhere, tucked between rows of pine trees, it felt like a blessing. A place where the loudest thing at night was a coyote or the rain tapping against her roof. She told herself this was peace. Coffee in the mornings, her journal open on the porch, the woods stretching endless and green. But silence has a way of turning on you, like a dog you thought was tame that suddenly bares its teeth. The first night, she heard it, a faint scrape against her bedroom window, just one long drag, like a nail on glass. She froze in bed, heart thumping, until it stopped. When she finally dared to look, the pain was empty, just her reflection staring back, wide-eyed. She laughed at herself. A branch. She even pushed the curtain aside, pretending she wasn't afraid. But the woods outside didn't move. No branch hung close enough. And in the glass, just for a second, she thought she saw another reflection, a pale blur leaning close. She shook it off. New places play tricks on the mind. That's what she told herself as she pulled the blanket tighter. But in the stillness of that cabin, deep in the heart of the woods, something else was awake. Something that had been waiting. And Sarah was exactly where it wanted her. It was close to midnight when Sarah heard it, that scrape at her bedroom window. The first time, she blamed the wind. The second, she thought maybe a branch. But the sound didn't sway. It pulsed, a rhythm. 1, 2, 3, like fingernails dragging slow across a chalkboard. Her pulse spiked. She sat up, toes curling into the wooden floor, and crept to the window. With a shaky hand, she tugged the curtain back. Nothing. Just her reflection in the glass, pale and startled, framed by the dark. She laughed under her breath, a weak sound in a room suddenly too big. I'm losing it, she whispered. She climbed back into bed, dragging the quilt up to her chin. Then the sound came again, louder, hungry. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Her throat tightened. This time she didn't check the window. She reached for her phone on the nightstand. No signal, no bars. The screen glared back at her like it was mocking her for being so far from anyone. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It pressed in on her, thick and heavy. She strained to hear something, anything, but the night outside was dead still. No coyotes, no wind, just a silence that made her ears ring. Minutes dragged. Her eyelids grew heavy, and just as she started to drift, she felt it, a breath. Not her own, damp and cold, brushing against her cheek. She bolted upright. The room was empty. The curtain swayed, but the window was shut, locked. Her skin crawled. She wanted to run outside, to start her car and drive until the cabin was a dot in her rearview mirror. But she couldn't move. Fear pinned her down, holding her tighter than any seatbelt. When she finally forced herself to the window again, she leaned close, scanning the glass. Her own face blinked back at her. Nothing strange, nothing out of place, until the reflection smiled. Sarah's breath caught. She stumbled backward, heart pounding so hard she could hear it. But the face on the other side of the glass, her face, but not, wasn't laughing with her. It was laughing at her. And just like that, it was gone. The pain was empty again. But she knew, deep in her bones, that something was out there, and it wasn't going away. Sarah bolted upright, her chest heaving like she'd been drowning. She forced herself, against every screaming instinct, to look back at the window. And that's when she saw her face, pressed against the glass, skin pale and sagging, like candle wax dripping down a bottle, eyes too wide, lids stretched so far they barely blinked. And that smile, God, that smile, stretched from ear to ear, a grin so sharp it looked like it could cut through the pain itself. Sarah screamed. The lamp on her nightstand flickered once, twice, then went black. When the bulb steadied, the face was gone. Her breath came in shudders. She stumbled from the bed, bare feet slapping against the floorboards as she ran through the cabin. She twisted locks, slammed bolts shut, yanked curtains across every window. But no matter how fast she moved, the silence moved faster, closing in, pressing against her skull, louder than her own pulse. Then came the sound. Not at the window, at the door. A slow, deliberate scratching, as if nails were raking down the wood, tracing the outline of where the latch sat. Sarah froze. The front door rattled once. Then again, she grabbed a fireplace poker from the hearth, her hands slick with sweat, and pressed herself against the wall. "Go away," she choked out, voice barely a whisper. The rattling stopped. For one beat, hope flared. Maybe it was over. Maybe it had left. And then, every window in the cabin exploded inward at once. Glass rained across the floor, shards glittering like ice in the moonlight. The wind screamed through the openings, carrying with it the smell of rot. Sarah spun, heart jackhammering, eyes darting between the shattered panes. That's when she saw it step through, not crawling, not lunging, walking, slow, patient, the way someone walks into their own home. Its head cocked at an unnatural angle, grin locked in place, eyes fixed on hers as if she were the only living thing left in the world. Her choice was immediate: fight or be taken. With a trembling roar, she lifted the poker high, and the thing smiled wider. When the sun finally dragged itself over the trees, Sarah clung to it like salvation. The pale light filtered through broken glass, warming her skin, and for one fragile moment, she convinced herself it had been a nightmare. Stress, imagination, cabin fever with a cool sense of humor. She swept the shards from the floor with shaking hands, her body stiff and raw from a night spent in the corner, gripping that fireplace poker like a lifeline. Every creak of the boards still made her flinch. Every shadow in the woods beyond the windows looked like it was leaning closer. By mid-morning, she'd worked up the courage to call the sheriff. Her voice cracked on the phone, but she forced the words out. Intruder, face at the glass, broken windows. She almost hung up halfway through. She sounded insane, and she knew it. But when the cruiser rolled up the dirt path and Sheriff Mathers stepped out, gruff, heavy-set, a man who'd seen too much to laugh at anything, Sarah felt something shift. He didn't mock. He didn't scold. He just walked the perimeter of the cabin with slow, deliberate steps. "Jesus," he muttered under his breath. Boot prints, dozens of them, stamped deep into the soft earth, circling her cabin in loops and figure eights. Sarah trailed behind him, her stomach sinking with every print he pointed out. They weren't random. They weren't careless. They traced the walls of her home like a predator pacing the bars of a cage. And then the sheriff stopped, right beneath her bedroom window. The glass still bore scratches, thin, deliberate lines carved deep into the pane, almost like tally marks. Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted him to tell her it was an animal, a prank, anything but what she already knew. But Mathers just squatted down, one meaty hand rubbing his jaw. "Tracks don't lead away," he said finally, his voice flat. "What do you mean?" Sarah whispered. He straightened, eyes narrowing at the woods beyond. "I mean, whoever was here didn't walk off." Sarah followed his gaze to where the footprints ended. They just stopped, in the middle of the dirt. No trail, no drag marks, no sign of retreat, as though whoever or whatever had been watching her hadn't left on foot. Hadn't left at all. Sarah doesn't sleep near that window anymore. She's dragged her bed to the far wall, as if distance alone could save her from whatever lingers out there in the dark. The sheriff never came back, never called with updates. And maybe that's worse. Silence pretending to be safety. Days passed quietly enough, Coffee on the porch, books stacked half read. She tells herself she's fine, stronger now, wiser. But the truth is written in the way she checks every lock 3 times before bed, in the way she keeps that fireplace poker leaned against the wall, always within reach. And some nights, on the still ones when the woods feel too quiet, she swears she hears it again. Not a branch, not the wind. That slow, deliberate scratching tracing the glass in perfect rhythm. She freezes under her blanket, staring at the opposite wall, refusing to turn her head, refusing to look. Because she knows if she does, she'll see it. That pale face, those impossible eyes, that grin stretching wider than before. So she pretends it isn't real, pretends it's just her imagination, pretends it's just the wind. But deep down she knows, it's still there, waiting, counting. And so let me ask you, when you go to bed tonight, will you dare to look at your window if you hear a sound? Or will you do what Sarah does and keep your eyes shut tight? Because the only thing worse than seeing something at your window is realizing it's been there all along. If this story kept you hooked tonight, don't forget to like the video. It helps the channel grow and pushes it to more people who love chilling tales like this. Make sure you subscribe for daily content and share this with someone who enjoys a good scare. Thank you for listening and watching. There's another story recommended on your screen right now. Click it and keep the night going. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Signals from the tunnel. You ever wonder what happens in the subway tunnels after the last train runs? Most people don't. The doors close, the lights flicker out, and they assume that's it. But someone's always left behind. Someone's got to walk the tracks, check the rails, make sure nothing's waiting down there. That's Jimmy's job. Regular guy, 38 years old. He likes the quiet, the solitude. Truth is, Jimmy's been running from noise all his life. His ex-wife, his debts, his mistakes. Down in those tunnels, the silence feels like forgiveness. He walks with a flashlight, the beam cutting through the stale air, dancing on wet brick walls and rusted pipes. There's a rhythm to it, step, click, sweep. The echo of his boots is the only heartbeat he trusts in. Sometimes he hums to himself. Old country songs, the kind his father used to sing when the world felt steady. Down here, even a hum sounds bigger, like the tunnel's throat is swallowing it whole. But every now and then, when Jimmy cuts the light and listens, really listens, he swears he hears something else. Not rats, not dripping water, not the hiss of air vents. Something softer, something deliberate. A sound that doesn't belong to the living or the machinery of the city. One night, he stops. The air feels thick, like the tunnel's holding its breath. And from somewhere ahead, past the bend where his light won't reach, comes a sound, faint, rising and falling. It's a voice, or maybe not a voice at all, just a signal. And Jimmy, poor bastard, doesn't know it yet, but once you hear it, you don't walk away the same. That night, the radio on his shoulder starts buzzing, static at first. He taps it, figures it's just interference, but then the static bends, like it's laughing. Not a normal laugh, thin, echoing, the kind of laugh you hear when you're sure you're alone. He walks faster, boots clanging on steel. The laugh changes, it becomes words, please. A voice begging, help, please, don't leave me down here. Jimmy freezes, he clicks the radio. Control, you reading this? But all he gets is more static, like the tunnel itself is breathing back at him. Then come the footsteps, behind him. Light, quick, getting closer. He doesn't turn, he just runs. And the faster he runs, the closer the steps get, like something's right at his back. The lights above him flicker once, twice. Then, darkness. Jimmy's heart thrashes against his ribs. He slaps his flashlight on, and its beam carves a path through black air. The tunnel walls look different now, closer, leaning in, sweating water that drips like clock ticks. The footsteps stop, silence again, but not peace. The silence is charged like the instant before a thunderclap. He forces himself to move, but every step feels heavier. He tries the radio again. Control, I need a check. Somebody answer me. This time, he hears his own voice coming back at him, delayed, warped, as though someone else is repeating him from a few feet away. A chill rolls down his spine. He isn't alone. He comes to a service alcove, just a notch cut into the wall, barely big enough for a man to squeeze into. He ducks inside, panting, the beam of his flashlight quivering in his hand. That's when he sees it. Paint on the wall. Not fresh, but not old either. Words scrawled in a frantic hand, black marker bleeding into concrete. Don't follow the signal. Jimmy leans closer, breath fogging the beam. There are scratch marks beneath the words. Deep gouges, like fingernails dragged across stone. The radio screams in his ear, high-pitched, shredded, not human anymore. He rips it off his shoulder, hurls it down the track. It clatters away into the dark. But the voice doesn't stop. Now it's not coming from the radio. It's coming from inside the tunnel itself. It's from ahead, a rumble. At first, he thinks it's his own heartbeat. But no, rails are vibrating. He knows that sound. A train. But there shouldn't be a train. Not now. Headlights bloom in the dark, blinding. The train is coming at full speed. No conductor, no brakes, horns screaming through the tunnel. Jimmy throws himself off the track, slams into the wall, and suddenly, he's not in the tunnel anymore. He's standing on the platform. Everything's wrong. The lights are too bright, too sterile. People swarm like shadows, their mouths moving, their faces blurred, as if they've been smudged out of a photograph. He hears the hiss of oxygen, the snap of gloves, paramedics kneeling, a stretcher being lifted. They're loading a body, his body, face crushed, bones twisted, his own eyes staring glassy into nothing. Jimmy's breath locks in his chest. He reaches out, tries to touch his own shoulder, but his hand passes straight through. Cold surges through him like water. Then the radio, his radio, still clipped to the corpse's chest, crackles to life. That same voice, the one that begged for help, now whispering, clear as a knife against glass. Stay with us. Stay underground. The paramedics' mouths move, but their voices don't match. Out of their throats comes the same broken laughter he heard in the static. Heads jerk toward him, faces peeling into masks of teeth and shadow. Jimmy stumbles back, finds himself suddenly not on the platform anymore, but dragged right back into the tunnel, the stretcher and the medics melting into dripping walls. The train roars behind him again, closer this time, like it's chasing him through the dark. The wall at his back vibrates with the force. He turns. The graffiti is still there. Don't follow the signal. And now he understands. The voice, the footsteps, the laughter, it's the tunnel itself, hungry, pulling him into its story. Jimmy has a choice. Step onto the track, let the train finish him, or run deeper into whatever waits where the signal leads. His flashlight flickers, then dies. The tunnel whispers, stay. And Jimmy, heart hammering, hands trembling, takes a step forward. And Jimmy stumbles back, tries to scream, tries to grab someone's arm, but nobody sees him. They move right through him like smoke. The subway lights flicker, steady themselves. And Jimmy feels it, a pull, back into the dark, back into the static hum of the radio. He claws at the tiled wall of the platform, desperate to stay anchored. His fingernails peel against the grout, but his body, if it can even be called that anymore, slips like fog. Every nerve screams as he's dragged toward the tunnel's mouth, toward the black maw that swallowed him once already. "Help me!" he howls. The words echo back, doubled, tripled, twisted, his own voice chasing him like a cruel chorus. On the platform, people pause. They frown. One woman tilts her head as if she almost heard him. But then the announcement chimes. Next train arriving in 2 minutes. And they scatter like nothing's wrong. Because they can't see him. They never could. Jimmy tumbles backward, feet skidding on invisible tracks, the fluorescent light shrinking into a pinhole. He's back in the tunnel. The smell of iron and mildew slams into him. The darkness welcomes him like an old friend. And there it is, the radio. Sitting neatly in the gravel, its red light blinking steady, like a heartbeat. The voice crawls from it again, softer this time, almost kind. "You're one of us now. You heard the signal. You belong." Jimmy shakes his head, presses his palms to his ears, but the sound isn't in the radio anymore. It's inside him, filling his lungs, threading through his veins, sinking with his pulse. He drops to his knees. All he can see are the words scrawled on the wall, over and over in his mind's eye. Don't follow the signal. And now he knows why. The footsteps return. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They echo from every direction, rushing closer, like a stampede in the dark. And as his vision fractures, Jimmy realizes he's not alone in here. There are others who heard the signal, others who couldn't walk away, and now they've come to welcome him. The next night, a different operator walks the tracks, new guy, green around the edges, still breaking in his boots. His flashlight beam shakes as he sweeps the tunnel walls, every shadow looking too alive, every drip echoing louder than it should. He pauses, adjusts the radio on his shoulder. It buzzes faintly, just static. He taps it, nothing unusual, keeps walking. But then, the static bends, just like it did for Jimmy. A thread of sound weaving through the noise, shaping itself into a voice. A man's voice. Help me. Please, don't leave me down here. The new guy stops cold, breath frosting in the air. He clicks the radio, calls for control. No answer, just that voice again, more desperate this time, clawing through the static. It sounds like it's coming from behind him, then ahead of him, then from the walls themselves. And here's the thing, he doesn't know the name Jimmy, doesn't know the warnings, the scribbles on the wall. To him, it's just a call for help. So he takes a step deeper into the dark, and as his flashlight trembles across the rails, the air thickens, heavy as wet wool. The signal grows clearer, sharper, until it's not just one voice but many, all begging, all whispering, all waiting. He presses the radio close to his ear, squinting into the black. Who's there? He asks. Because once you ask, once you listen, once you let that signal in, you're theirs. And Jimmy's voice, clear as day now, answers back. Welcome. So let me ask you, next time you ride the subway late at night, when the lights flicker, when the radio hisses, do you answer or do you run? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories reaching more listeners. Don't forget to subscribe for daily chills and tales that'll follow you into the dark. And if you know someone who'd get a kick or a shiver from this story, share it with them. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. There's another video waiting for you right now, recommended on your tongue. I'll see you back here what happens in the subway tunnels after the last train runs? Most people don't. The doors close, the lights flicker out, and they assume that's it. But someone's always left behind. Someone's got to walk the tracks, check the rails, make sure nothing's waiting down there. That's Jimmy's job. Regular guy, 38 years old. He likes the quiet, the solitude. The truth is, Jimmy's been running from noise all his life. His ex-wife, his debts, his mistakes. Down in those tunnels, the silence feels like forgiveness. He walks with a flashlight, the beam cutting through the stale air, dancing on wet brick walls and rusted pipes. There's a rhythm to it, step, click, sweep. The echo of his boots is the only heartbeat he trusts anymore. Sometimes he hums to himself. Old country songs, the kind his father used to sing when the world felt steady. Down here, even a hum sounds bigger, like the tunnel's throat is swallowing it whole. But every now and then, when Jimmy cuts the light and listens, really listens, he swears he hears something else. Not rats, not dripping water, not the hiss of air vents. Something softer, something deliberate. A sound that doesn't belong to the living or the machinery of the city. One night, he stops. The air feels thick, like the tunnel's holding its breath. And from somewhere ahead, past the bend where his light won't reach, comes a sound, faint, rising and falling. It's a voice. Or maybe not a voice at all, just a signal. And Jimmy, poor bastard, doesn't know it yet. But once you hear it, you don't walk away the same. And that night, the radio on his shoulder starts buzzing. Static at first. He taps it, figures it's just interference. But then the static bends, like it's laughing. Not a normal laugh, thin, echoing. The kind of laugh you hear when you're sure you're alone. He walks faster, boots clanging on steel. The laugh changes. It becomes words, please. A voice begging, help me, please. Don't leave me down here. Jimmy freezes. He clicks the radio. Control, you reading this? But all he gets is more static, like the tunnel itself is breathing back at him. Then come the footsteps, behind him. Light, quick, getting closer. He doesn't turn, he just runs. And the faster he runs, the closer the steps get, like something's right at his back. The lights above him flicker once, twice. Then, darkness. Jimmy's heart thrashes against his ribs. He slaps his flashlight on, and its beam carves a path through black air. The tunnel walls look different now, closer, leaning in, sweating water that drips like clock ticks. The footsteps stop, silence again, but not peace. The silence is charged like the instant before a thunderclap. He forces himself to move, but every step feels heavier. He tries the radio again. Control, I need a check. Somebody answer me. This time, he hears his own voice coming back at him, delayed, warped, as though someone else is repeating him from a few feet away. A chill rolls down his spine. He isn't alone. He comes to a service alcove, just a notch cut into the wall, barely big enough for a man to squeeze into. He ducks inside, panting, the beam of his flashlight quivering in his hand. That's when he sees it. Paint on the wall. Not fresh, but not old either. Words scrawled in a frantic hand, black marker bleeding into concrete. Don't follow the signal. Jimmy leans closer, breath fogging the beam. There are scratch marks beneath the words. Deep gouges, like fingernails dragged across stone. The radio screams in his ear, high-pitched, shredded, not human anymore. He rips it off his shoulder, hurls it down the track. It clatters away into the dark. But the voice doesn't stop. Now it's not coming from the radio. It's coming from inside the tunnel itself. It's from ahead, a rumble. At first, he thinks it's his own heartbeat. But no, rails are vibrating. He knows that sound. A train. But there shouldn't be a train. Not now. Headlights bloom in the dark, blinding. The train is coming at full speed. No conductor, no brakes, horns screaming through the tunnel. Jimmy throws himself off the track, slams into the wall, and suddenly, he's not in the tunnel anymore. He's standing on the platform. Everything's wrong. The lights are too bright, too sterile. People swarm like shadows, their mouths moving, their faces blurred, as if they've been smudged out of a photograph. He hears the hiss of oxygen, the snap of gloves, paramedics kneeling, a stretcher being lifted. They're loading a body, his body, face crushed, bones twisted, his own eyes staring glassy into nothing. Jimmy's breath locks in his chest. He reaches out, tries to touch his own shoulder, but his hand passes straight through. Cold surges through him like water. Then the radio, his radio, still clipped to the corpse's chest, crackles to life. That same voice, the one that begged for help, now whispering, clear as a knife against glass. Stay with us. Stay underground. The paramedics' mouths move, but their voices don't match. Out of their throats comes the same broken laughter he heard in the static. Heads jerk toward him, faces peeling into masks of teeth and shadow. Jimmy stumbles back, finds himself suddenly not on the platform anymore, but dragged right back into the tunnel, the stretcher and the medics melting into dripping walls. The train roars behind him again, closer this time, like it's chasing him through the dark. The wall at his back vibrates with the force. He turns. The graffiti is still there. Don't follow the signal. And now he understands. The voice, the footsteps, the laughter, it's the tunnel itself, hungry, pulling him into its story. Jimmy has a choice. Step onto the track, let the train finish him, or run deeper, into whatever waits where the signal leads. His flashlight flickers, then dies. The tunnel whispers, stay. And Jimmy, heart hammering, hands trembling, takes a step forward. And Jimmy stumbles back, tries to scream, tries to grab someone's arm, but nobody sees him. They move right through him like smoke. The subway lights flicker, steady themselves. And Jimmy feels it, a pull, back into the dark, back into the static hum of the radio. He claws at the tiled wall of the platform, desperate to stay anchored. His fingernails peel against the grout, but his body, if it can even be called that anymore, slips like fog. Every nerve screams as he's dragged toward the tunnel's mouth, toward the black maw that swallowed him once already. Help me, he howls. The words echo back, doubled, tripled, twisted, his own voice chasing him like a cruel chorus. On the platform, people pause. They frown. One woman tilts her head as if she almost heard him. But then the announcement chimes. Next train arriving in 2 minutes. And they scatter like nothing's wrong. Because they can't see him. They never could. Jimmy tumbles backward, feet skidding on invisible tracks, the fluorescent light shrinking into a pinhole. He's back in the tunnel. The smell of iron and mildew slams into him. The darkness welcomes him like an old friend. And there it is, the radio. Sitting neatly in the gravel, its red light blinking steady, like a heartbeat. The voice crawls from it again, softer this time, almost kind. You're one of us now. You heard the signal. You belong. Jimmy shakes his head, presses his palms to his ears, but the sound isn't in the radio anymore. It's inside him, filling his lungs, threading through his veins, sinking with his pulse. He drops to his knees. All he can see are the words scrawled on the wall, over and over in his mind's eye. Don't follow the signal. And now he knows why. The footsteps return. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They echo from every direction, rushing closer, like a stampede in the dark. And as his vision fractures, Jimmy realizes he's not alone in here. There are others who heard the signal, others who couldn't walk away, and now they've come to welcome him. The next night, a different operator walks the tracks, new guy, green around the edges, still breaking in his boots. His flashlight beam shakes as he sweeps the tunnel walls, every shadow looking too alive, every drip echoing louder than it should. He pauses, adjusts the radio on his shoulder. It buzzes faintly, just static. He taps it, nothing unusual, keeps walking. But then, the static bends, just like it did for Jimmy. A thread of sound weaving through the noise, shaping itself into a voice. A man's voice. Help me. Please, don't leave me down here. The new guy stops cold, breath frosting in the air. He clicks the radio, calls for control. No answer, just that voice again, more desperate this time, clawing through the static. It sounds like it's coming from behind him, then ahead of him, then from the walls themselves. And here's the thing. He doesn't know the name Jimmy, doesn't know the warnings, the scribbles on the wall. To him, it's just a call for help. So he takes a step deeper into the dark, and as his flashlight trembles across the rails, the air thickens, heavy as wet wool. The signal grows clearer, sharper, until it's not just one voice but many, all begging, all whispering, all waiting. He presses the radio close to his ear, squinting into the black. Who's there? He asks. Because once you ask, once you listen, once you let that signal in, you're theirs. And Jimmy's voice, clear as day now, answers back. Welcome. So let me ask you, next time you ride the subway late at night, when the lights flicker, when the radio hisses, do you answer or do you run? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories reaching more listeners. Don't forget to subscribe for daily chills and tales that'll follow you into the dark. And if you know someone who'd get a kick or a shiver from this story, share it with them. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. There's another video waiting for you right now, recommended on your screen. I'll see you back here tomorrow. The freezer door. You ever notice how the grocery store feels different at night? Not just quiet, not just empty, but wrong, like the lights hum louder, like the air presses colder against your skin, as if it knows you shouldn't be there. That's what Ben thought anyway. Ben was 24, working the graveyard shift at Grady's Market in this little nowhere town. He wasn't anyone remarkable, nice enough but drifting. He wanted to be a painter. Oils, portraits, maybe landscapes. But dreams don't pay rent. Bills stacked higher than ambition. And so there he was, pushing pallets of soup cans, sweeping aisles sticky with soda, counting the minutes until dawn. The store was his purgatory. Too bright, too clean, too quiet. Fluorescents buzzed overhead like electric bees. Refrigeration units hummed with a low mechanical growl, and the clock on the wall seemed to tick slower the longer you looked at it. That night, Ben was kneeling in front of the frozen food section. The glass doors were frosted over, whispering cool air onto his face. He was restocking peas, green bags rustling in his hands, his breath fogging in front of him, fingers stiff with cold. He thought maybe the thermostat was busted because, God, it felt more like a meat locker than a freezer aisle. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part came after, when the freezer door opened. Not a crack, not a squeak, wide, like something inside had pushed from the other side. Ben froze, a bag of peas dangling from his hand. There was no one else in the store, no one in the aisle, just him, the humming lights, and that yawning black throat of cold air spilling out into the room. And it stayed open, as though it was waiting. At first, Ben laughed. Wind, he muttered under his breath, though the words sounded brittle in the silence. But there's no wind inside a locked grocery store. No drafts in hermetically sealed freezers, and the air that rushed out, it wasn't normal cold. It bit, it cut, it clawed at his skin like it wanted inside him. Then he saw them. Frosty footprints, bare feet, small, delicate, pressed into the thin layer of condensation on the tiles. They shimmered faintly in the fluorescent light, as if freshly made, leading inward, into the freezer. Ben swallowed. His tongue felt heavy, useless. Still, he moved, slowly. He pushed his empty stocking cart ahead of him, the wheels squeaking faintly. Each step echoed sharper than it should have, as though the sound was swallowed and spit back wrong. The deeper he went, the quieter everything became. The hum of the freezers faded, the buzzing of the lights dimmed. He realized he could hear his own heartbeat, quick and uneven. And then he noticed the shelves. They didn't look right. The meat packages, ground beef, pork chops, chicken thighs, they weren't stacked anymore. They were arranged shapes, faces, screaming mouths and straining eyes, not sculpted with care but twisted into grotesque expressions of agony, as though the flesh itself had remembered pain and frozen mid-scream. Plastic wrap pulled tight over horror. Ben's breath hitched. His vision swam. He wanted to run. Every fiber of his body screamed for him to, but something held him, something heavier than fear. Curiosity, dread, both pulling at him like a leash. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched one of the packages. Cold seeped into his fingertips, deeper than skin, sinking into bone. The face inside shifted, just a flicker, but it shifted. Ben stumbled back. Bags of peas tumbled from his arms, bursting across the floor in a scatter of frozen marbles. Then came the sound, a thump from deeper in the freezer. Another thump, louder, closer. The footprints trailed toward the sound, their edges sharp, frost glittering like shards of glass. "Hello?" Ben croaked. His voice cracked like a boy's, raw with terror. He hated himself for saying it, for speaking into the dark where no answer should exist. But an answer came, not a voice. A laugh soft, wet, crawling into his ears like something alive. And the freezer door, the one behind him, the way out, slammed shut. And that's when the door slammed shut. The sound was deafening, a gunshot in a mausoleum. Glass rattled in its frame, and the aisle plunged into a suffocating twilight. Only the pale glow of the freezer lights remained, long thin strips buzzing faintly like dying fireflies. Ben spun, heart pounding. He lunged for the handle, grasping it with both hands. It was slick with frost, ice biting into his palms. He yanked, he twisted, he shoved his shoulder against it. Nothing. The metal didn't even rattle. It was as if the door had fused to the wall, locked by something older and crueler than a bolt. He pounded his fist, the sound dull, muffled. His screams came raw and desperate. "Help, please, somebody!" But who? Who would come? It was 3 in the morning in a forgotten market, and no one in the world even knew he was here. The air shifted, colder, thinner. Every breath burned down his throat like shards of glass. His chest heaved, lungs seizing, vision blurring at the edges. And then he felt it. Hands, not flesh, not human, but weight. Cold, invisible fingers coiling around his ankles, icy pressure sinking into bone. They yanked. Ben dropped to the floor, his body skidding across the tiles. His palms scraped, his knees cracked against the cold. He kicked, he screamed, nails clawing at the condensation slick glass. The freezer lights flickered, long shadows stretching like teeth across the walls. "Stop! Let go! Please!" His voice shredded into a ragged whisper. The dragging didn't stop. It pulled him past the grotesque shelves of meat, past the frozen faces staring in eternal silence. His fingernails tore bloody trails into the fogged surface of the glass, thin crescents of flesh left behind. The air crystallized around his lips. His final breath billowed white in the dark. And the hands, relentless, merciless, dragged him backward, deeper and deeper into the racks of meat, into the cold, into the waiting dark that swallowed everything whole, until there was nothing left. By morning, the day shift stumbled in, sleepy-eyed, clutching coffees, shuffling through the sliding doors of Grady's Market like cattle. They weren't prepared for what they found. The freezer door stood wide open, wider than wide, in fact, yawned open as though it had been waiting all night. Cold poured out in thick ribbons, curling across the tiles like smoke after a fire. The air was damp, raw. You could see your breath before you even made it past the register lanes. "Thermostat must have blown," one of them muttered, hugging her sweater tighter. But then they saw what wasn't there. No bin, no cart stacked with peas and frozen dinners. No jacket draped over the stool at his post. His keys, wallet, name tag, all gone. Just gone. The police came. They asked questions, wrote reports, clicked pens against their clipboards while their breath smoked the air. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no footprints leading out the back. Cameras showed Ben alive and moving just after 2 a.m., stocking shelves, pushing his cart. Then, nothing. No exit. No shadow slipping past the registers. He just vanished, frame by frame. But the glass, that was different. The freezer doors were streaked with frost, slick with condensation, and right there, etched across the fog like some desperate graffiti, a handprint. A human hand splayed wide, fingers clawing outward. Pressed so hard the frost had hardened into ridges, frozen deep as if the mark itself had been burned into the glass by sheer terror. They measured it, compared it, Ben's size, no doubt. His mother came, eyes swollen, whispering, "That's him. That's my boy's hand." The market stayed closed for 2 days. Then, like nothing had happened, they reopened. Shelves restocked, lights buzzing overhead again, customers complaining about prices, oblivious. Life, as it does, pretended to move on. But not for the people who worked there, not for the night crew. They spoke in hushed tones during shift changes, about how the freezer aisle felt colder, about how sometimes they heard knocking, faint from inside, a steady rhythm that made the hair on their arms rise. One boy swore he saw something worse. Stocking juice boxes, late one night he glanced down the freezer row and saw the glass fog. A shape forming, not just a hand this time. A face, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a scream, pressing outward like someone buried beneath ice. He quit the next morning. The managers called it nerves, stress. The mind plays tricks. That's what they told themselves. That's what they told the cops when the case sat cold for months. But sometimes, when the hum of the lights goes low and the store is empty, workers swear the freezer doors breathe, that you can see frost blooming across the glass in the shape of fingers, that if you stand too long in front of them, you'll hear it, the faint drag of nails against the other side. Waiting. The police closed the file in less than 6 weeks, called it an accident, a disappearance. Walk-off, they wrote in their reports. Happens all the time. A young man drowning in bills, too many late nights, maybe he snapped, maybe he just packed up and left. But tell me this, if you walk away, how do you leave your hand inside the freezer door? Ben's co-workers didn't believe the accident story. Not really. They still whispered about him during smoke breaks, huddled under the orange glow of parking lot lamps. Some swore they saw his reflection in the glass when they closed at night, too pale, too thin, standing just behind them when no one else was in the aisle. One girl quit mid-shift, leaving her apron in a heap by the register. Said she heard her name whispered from the freezer, clear as a bell. Said she felt breath on the back of her neck as she turned the corner into the frozen food aisle. And yet, the store stayed open, because the world moves forward, even if something inside it stays stuck. As for Ben, did he change? Yes, but not in the way he wanted. He'd wanted to paint, remember? To make faces eternal on canvas, to capture what it means to be human. Funny thing is, he got his wish. The faces are still there, behind the freezer glass. Warped, screaming, frozen into meat. Sometimes new ones appear, arranged in patterns that no stock boy admits to making. And at the edge of it all, if you look closely enough, you'll see his. Ben's face. Eyes wide, mouth open, trapped mid-scream in the frost. And here's the part you won't like. If you're ever in a grocery store late at night, stocking shelves or wandering aisles you don't belong in, and the freezer door swings open all by itself, don't go in. Don't even look too long at the dark behind the glass, because Ben is still there, waiting, and he's not alone. If this story chilled you tonight, make sure to like this video. It really helps the channel grow and make sure more people find these tales. Subscribe for new stories every single day. And don't forget to share this with someone who loves a good scare. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And remember, there's another story waiting for you right here on your screen. I'll see you back tomorrow. Now, sleep tight. Room 421B. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked past a room you weren't supposed to open? Every hospital has one. A locked door, a wing that doesn't get used anymore. You don't think much about it. You just move along. Our nurse, her name's Claire, 26, working the night shift at St. Mary's, a small town hospital with peeling paint and vending machines that eat your dollar bills. She's exhausted, running on coffee and nerves. And here's the thing about Claire, she's curious, too curious. The kind of person who can't ignore the sound of a phone ringing, even if it's not hers. And tonight she hears crying. Not the usual kind. Not a newborn. Not a drunk in the ER. No, this is different. The sound's coming from room 14B. Problem is, 14B's been locked since 1987. The hallway it sits on doesn't get much traffic anymore. The linoleum tiles are cracked, the paint bubbling from too many winters, and not enough care. Even the fluorescent lights overhead buzz differently here, like they're struggling to stay alive. And there it is again. That sound. Low, broken sobs seeping from behind the locked door. Claire tells herself it's a trick of fatigue, that she's been on her feet too long, that she's hearing things. But as she gets closer, she swears she feels the vibration of the crying through the handle. Metal carrying sorrow like a tuning fork. She tries the knob. It doesn't move. Of course it doesn't. But in the pit of her stomach, something unsettles, a question taking root. Why does it sound like someone's inside? And here's the thing. Once you start listening to Room 14B, you can't unhear it. Claire tells herself she misheard it. Keeps walking. But the sound follows her. Wet, desperate sobbing, like it's weaving through the hall vents, chasing her steps. Finally, she does what she shouldn't. She slides her master key into the old door, heart hammering in her throat. The lock gives with a click, reluctant but yielding. She pushes the door open, and the smell hits her first. Dust, copper, and something rotten underneath. The tang of a wound left untended. The room shouldn't be occupied, but it is. There's a woman strapped to the bed, wrists bound with cracked leather cuffs, ankles cinched tight, a wide belt across her chest. The gown she wears is ancient, yellow, fabric stamped with the logo St. Mary's retired decades ago. And then, Claire sees the worst part. Her eyes, sewn shut, coarse black thread zigzagging through the lids, puckering the skin. Claire stumbles back, hand over her mouth, but the woman turns her head, opens her lips, and starts whispering Claire's name. Not just her name, things nobody should know. Her grandmother's lullaby, the one sung in a low, tremoring voice. The lie Claire told last week about covering a double when she wasn't. The way she used to hide under her bed when her parents fought, biting her hand so no one could hear her crying. Every word slices deep, dragging up the ghost she thought she'd buried. Claire backs into the hall and smashes her palm against the wall intercom. Dead. She fumbles for her pager. Nothing. Her phone shows a black screen, unresponsive. The sobbing in the room shifts, growing louder, morphing into a ragged wail that seeps through plaster, bleeds into the corridor itself. The air vibrates with it, a chorus of unseen voices joining the woman's cries. Claire grips the doorframe, shaking. She knows she should run, but her legs don't move. The sewn-shut woman lifts her head, straining against her restraints, and in that dark seam where her eyes should be, Claire swears she sees movement, a glimmer, like something alive, squirming beneath the stitches. And then, just as Claire turns to flee, the door slams shut behind her with a force that rattles the hall. She's inside now, and the key is gone. The woman snaps against the restraints, jerking, thrashing, until the straps tear loose with a sound like ripping leather. The buckles pop one by one, flinging metal fragments across the room. Claire backs herself into the corner, palms slit, every instinct screaming, "Don't watch, don't watch." But she does. The woman claws at her face, nails raking her own skin, tearing at the black thread that holds her lids closed. Each stitch pops with a sickening snap. Blood streaks down her cheeks in thin rivers, spattering the sheets, the floor, the wall. The sound, wet fibrous, makes Claire gag. And then her eyes open. Only there are no eyes. No iris, no sclera, nothing human at all. Just two hollow caverns, blacker than shadow, blacker than death. They seem to breathe, pulling the air, pulling the light, sucking the room into them. She lunges toward Claire, and the scream that comes out of her throat is not one voice, but 1,000. Male, female, child, old, woven together in a choir of agony. "It's your turn." The words hammer into Claire's chest, rattling her bones. "Let me out!" The lights explode overhead, showering glass, plunging the room into flickering darkness. The door slams shut so violently the frame cracks. Claire scrambles for the handle, but it's gone. Nothing but smooth wood under her trembling fingers. The black-eyed woman advances, bare feet slapping the floor, arms outstretched. And with each step, Claire feels the hospital itself respond. Walls trembling, vents shrieking, floorboards moaning. The crying she heard before swells to a roar, now pouring from every surface. "Your turn, your turn, your turn." The chant crawls inside her skull, louder than thought. Claire presses her hands to her ears, but it doesn't stop. It's inside her now, threading through her veins like poison. She knows in the marrow of her bones, what the woman wants. To pass it on, to trade places. The black pits are a cage, and the only key is her. Claire's back hits the wall. The woman is inches away. Those empty eyes widen, pulling at her, tugging her forward like gravity. Claire screams, and in the scream, she makes her choice. But by the time her voice breaks, it's already too late. Security finally breaks in, the door crashing wide under their shoulders. The lights sputter, humming back to life, throwing a sickly glow across the room. Claire blinks hard against it, her chest heaving, her throat raw from screaming. The bed is empty. No woman, no blood. Just straps dangling loose, leather cracked and darkened where sweat should have been. Still warm to the touch when one of the guards checks, frowning. The room smells of dust again, like nothing had ever happened. The guards exchange a look. One lets out a short, uneasy laugh, shaking his head. You nodded off, kid. Dreamt it. This wing's been closed for 30 years. Another pulls a clipboard, already scribbling. Improper access, he mutters. You're lucky. It's just a write-up. Locked doors are locked for a reason. Claire doesn't argue. She doesn't say a word. They walk her back to the nurse's station, still muttering to each other about overworked rookies, the dangers of night shift. They don't see the way she grips her arms across her chest, pressing hard like she's trying to hold herself inside her own skin. They don't hear the faint echo still clinging to her ears. Your turn. Hours crawl. The hospital room resumes its rhythm, machines beeping, the occasional groan of a patient down the hall, the clatter of carts on tile. Life goes on as though room Fort B doesn't exist. But Claire feels different. Shifted. The world a shade too quiet, the shadows stretch longer than they should be. When she looks into the reflective glass of a medicine cabinet, she swears. Just for a second, her eyes look darker than they should, hollow, like something peering out from behind them. At dawn, she clocks out, walks through the sliding doors into the thin morning air. The sky is pale and harmless, ordinary, but inside her chest, under the thrum of her heart, there's another pulse, a slow, steady beat, not hers. And when she closes her eyes, she hears the whisper again. Not distant, not from a room, inside her. Your turn. Because when she gets back to the nurse's station, she sees it. A new chart, sitting dead center on her desk like it's been waiting all night. No one saw who put it there. No one claims responsibility. Patient admitted. Room 14B, no name listed. Just a blank wristband tucked into the folder. The band feels cold in her hand, almost damp, like it's been worn before. Claire stares at it too long. Her skin prickles, her throat tightening as the air thins around her. She knows, sooner or later, it won't just be paperwork. The chart, the band, the empty bed, it's all waiting. And when the time comes, when the whisper finally stops asking, it'll be her lying there, strapped down, eyes sewn shut, crying for someone else to open the door. And that's the cruelest part. She can already feel it starting. The hollow in her eyes, the second heartbeat in her chest, the chant that never quiets. Your turn. So let me leave you with this. If you heard crying from behind a locked door, would you open it? Or would you walk away, pretending you never heard a thing? Because once you do, once you open it, it doesn't close it. If you enjoyed tonight's story, make sure to like this video. It helps the channel grow and keeps the stories coming your way every day. Subscribe so you never miss the next tale, and share this one with someone who loves a good scare. Or maybe with someone who thinks they wouldn't open the door. Thanks for listening and for watching. There's another video recommended on your screen right now. Go ahead, click it if you're brave enough. And I'll see you back here tomorrow. Alone or maybe not. The Graveyard Custodian. You ever wonder who takes care of a cemetery at night? Not the flowers, not the tombstones. I mean the in-between hours, when the sun is gone, when the crickets fall silent, and the air smells like rust and wet leaves. The hours when the shadows stretch too long, and every sound seems to come from under the earth instead of above it. That's when Harold's shift begins. Harold, small-town guy, 50 years old, the kind of man you wouldn't look at twice in the grocery store. His hands are calloused, his back bent from years of raking, sweeping, patching up broken fences. He wears the same faded work jacket every night, stitched at the elbows, smelling faintly of tobacco and old rain. He's not dangerous, not exciting, just there, the custodian of the dead. And Harold, he's got a flaw. He doesn't believe in anything he can't see. Ghosts, spirits, even God. Nope. He says, dead is dead, dirt's dirt. That's it. He tells himself that the cemetery is just another job site, like cleaning a parking lot, only with more marble and less chewing gum. He doesn't linger on the names etched in granite, doesn't wonder who they were, doesn't whisper a greeting as he sweeps past. But the truth is, whether he admits it or not, the cemetery doesn't feel like any parking lot. At night, there's a heaviness in the ground, as if the earth itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. The lamps along the gravel paths flicker like nervous eyes. The trees, black-boned and skeletal, shift against the wind, though sometimes there is no wind. Harold ignores all that. He carries on with his broom and lantern, telling himself he's the only living thing awake inside the iron gates. And yet, sometimes when he's locking up at the far end near the mausoleum, he swears he hears footsteps. Not behind him, not ahead, but underneath. As though someone or something is pacing the hollow corridors of the soil, keeping rhythm with his every move. He laughs it off, mutters, "Nerves, just the old pipes creaking." Because for Harold, the world is simple. 6 feet down means silence forever. But cemeteries don't stay silent forever. Not this one. And soon, Harold will learn that the dead don't take kindly to being ignored. It starts with sounds, always sounds. A clink of metal where there shouldn't be. The slow drag of something heavy through the grass, like furniture being moved in a room he can't see. He tells himself it's raccoons, wind, his imagination running overtime in the graveyard gloom. But the sounds don't stop, they grow bolder. Footsteps where no one should be. A cough, faint but human, rising from beneath the earth. Once, he swears he hears his own name whispered so low, it feels like it slithered straight into his ear. Then comes the night that changes everything. Row 7, lot 4. Harold is raking leaves, the lantern glow shaking with each nervous breath. That's when he sees it. The dirt isn't still. It's moving, shifting, slow at first, then steady, like the ground itself is breathing. He drops his broom. His heart stutters. Not possible, he mutters, voice cracking. But it is. The coffin lid doesn't blast open like in the movies. No theatrics, no sudden jolt. Instead, it rises, an inch, another, until pale, skeletal hands reach out, curling over the rim like claws, fingers stripped of most of their flesh, nails split and cracked but undeniably real. And then with a sound like wet rope snapping, the thing climbs out. It stands crooked, its head cocked at an unnatural angle, a body half rotted but impossibly animated. Worms wriggle across a cheekbone, its eye sockets are shadowed caves. Harold's lungs forget how to work. His mop handle slips in his palms, sweat making the wood slick. His whole body begs him to run, but his feet root to the ground. The figure stumbles toward him, one step, another. Its skull tilts, and then its jaw creaks open. The voice that leaks out isn't some demonic growl. No guttural moan. No nonsense syllables from hell. It's a whisper, familiar, fragile. Harold. And Harold knows that voice. Like knows it so well his bones ache from the recognition. It's his father. The man who'd been in the ground 15 years. The man Harold buried with his own 2 hands helping lower the casket. A father who died angry, fists heavy, words heavier. A man Harold swore he was glad to see lowered into the dirt. Now here he is, clawing his way back into the night. Harold staggers backward, nearly toppling into another grave. His breath comes in jagged cuts. "No," he hisses. "No, you're dead. You're dead!" But the figure lurches closer, dragging one ruined foot. "You left me in the dark, son," the voice rasps. "You never prayed, never remembered." Harold clamps his hands over his ears, but it doesn't help. The words sink into his skull like nails. He runs, finally runs, stumbling toward the gate, keys jangling wildly. Behind him, the graveyard seems to wake. More shifting dirt, more lids creaking. A chorus of whispers swelling from beneath the soil, each one knowing his name. And for the first time in his life, Harold understands. Dead is not dead. Dirt is not dirt, and he is no longer the only one on duty tonight. Here's the thing. Harold buried his old man 30 years ago. Buried him angry. Buried him without forgiveness, without prayer, without a tear. His father had been a cruel man, hard with his hands, sharper with his words. A man who left bruises deeper than skin. A man Harold swore he'd never forget. And yet, here he is, crawled out of the earth like some nightmare no one ever wakes from. Half decayed, teeth blackened, eyes like burned out coals. And he's calling Harold's name. "Son, come closer." And Harold, God help him, he does. His legs don't ask for permission. They betray him, carrying him closer to the corpse. The stench of rot fills his nose, thick, wet, unbearable. His lantern shakes so violently it throws crazed shadows across the gravestones. The thing that used to be his father tilts its head, lips splitting wider, bone cracking beneath the stretch. Then it lunges, hands clamp down on Harold's shoulders, ice-cold bone grinding against living flesh. The grip is impossibly strong, pulling him down toward the open grave. You left me in the dark. The voice growls, deeper now, guttural, as though every maggot squirming in its chest is adding to the chorus. Now, you'll keep me company. Harold thrashes, but his father's fingers dig into muscle, into tendon, like hooks. His feet slide across the loose dirt, pulling him toward the pit. Behind him, other graves are stirring, lids cracking, whispers rising into screams, an army of the forgotten, all calling his name. And Harold understands, in one sickening jolt, this isn't about raccoons. This isn't about nerves. This is punishment. His whole life he mocked the dead, mocked God, mocked anything beyond what he could sweep or burn. Now the dead have come to collect the debt. Harold has one choice. He can let go, let the earth swallow him whole. Or he can fight, not just for his life, but for his soul. He grips the lantern tightly, glass trembling in his fist. With a roar born of fear and fury, he smashes it against his father's chest. Fire erupts, oil spilling, flames licking across rotted cloth, catching the corpse like dry tinder. The thing screams, a sound not human, not animal, but something older, blacker. Harold wrenches free, stumbling back, his jacket catching sparks. The graveyard is alive with light and horror, that shadows dancing like devils across the stones. And Harold knows nothing will ever be the same. Harold screams, wrestles free, stumbles backward into the wet grass. The flames sputter, hiss, and then gutter out, leaving only a smear of smoke and the reek of charred rot. The thing doesn't chase him. It just stands there, jaw twitching as if trying to form another word. Then something shifts. The horizon softens. The black sky begins to peel open with the faintest blade of silver. Dawn, and when the sliver of sunlight cuts across the cemetery, the corpse collapses. Not with drama, not with rage, just folds in on itself, bones splintering to dust, skin crumbling like old paper. It slumps into the grave it clawed out of, dragging the coffin lid shut with a dull, final thud. Silence. Only Harold's ragged breathing remains. The mop he dropped hours, or was it minutes ago, still lies in the grass, its wooden handle pointing accusingly at him. He stands there shaking, knees weak, throat raw. He half expects the other graves to keep open, the whispers to continue. But no, the cemetery is quiet again, too quiet. And that silence is almost worse. When the sun rises fully, washing the headstones in pale gold, Harold is still there. Lantern shattered, jacket singed, hands trembling. He doesn't even bother locking the gate behind him when he finally stumbles out. He just walks. And with every step, he feels the weight of what he's seen pressing deeper into his ribs. All day, he says nothing. Not to the woman at the diner who asks if he's all right. Not to the kid who delivers the paper. He doesn't dare. Because how do you tell anyone that the dead aren't dead? How do you explain that they're waiting, watching, ready to claw their way back for the smallest slight? That night, Harold doesn't return to work. He sits in his kitchen with all the lights on, drinking until his hands stop shaking. But through the window, beyond the line of trees, he swears he can see the cemetery gates. And he swears, God help him, that someone is standing just inside, watching. He shuts the blinds. But blinds don't keep out memory. They don't keep out voices, especially voices that sound like your father's. And Harold knows this isn't over. Not yet. Want me to bring it all home with the denouement, where the lingering dread leaves the listener with a final chill? Harold doesn't quit the job. He can't. Not because of money, not because anyone would care if he vanished. He stays because he knows. He knows that what he saw wasn't some dream. Not whiskey, not nerves. It was real. And he knows that when night falls again, row 7, lot 4 will stir. The soil will shift, the coffin will creak, his father will rise, and every night after that, he'll come back hungrier, angrier. So Harold does the only thing he can. He shows up. He mops the path, sweeps the leaves, rattles his keys at the gates like it's all still normal. But it isn't. It'll never be. He doesn't even light his lantern anymore. What good's light when the dark knows your name? Each shift becomes a waiting game, a test. The rattle of chains, the scrape of wood, the slow, steady pull of fingernails against pine. And Harold listens, because he understands now. Once the dead remember you, there's no going back. He's bound to this place, shackled by blood and guilt. Every night, he braces himself for the moment when his father claws his way free again. And every morning, he staggers home, unbroken, but not untouched. And here's where I'll leave you with a thought. Tell me, if it were you out there, in the dark, Sweeping leaves while your father clawed his way from the ground? Would you run, or would you stay to face him? If you've been gripped by Harold's story tonight, do me a favor, like this video. It helps the channel grow, helps it reach more people who crave stories that crawl under your skin, and stay there. And don't forget to subscribe if you want daily content. Fresh nightmares, new chills, stories that keep the lights burning long into the night. Share this with someone who'd understand, or someone who wouldn't believe you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. There's another video waiting for you on your screen right now. One I think you'll want to see next. And I'll see you back here tomorrow.